What we're going to do now is they are throwing things up the cars. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on Thursday the 11th of June. We are live across the United Kingdom, Britain's newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, fiery clashes erupted between anti-immigration protesters and riot police in Belfast in a second night of disorder.
Demonstrators were met with water cannons, the only part of the United Kingdom where they're permissible, and plastic bullets as they attempted to march on a Belfast asylum hotel.
Well, this comes, of course, as it's revealed that the Sudanese man accused of attempted murder was let in through the asylum fast-track scheme.
Well, the disorder last night has left the derelict building behind me burnt out, cars destroyed in the streets, 12 police officers injured, 16 arrests, as police officers and politicians reiterate their urgent demand for calm.
And GB News has been granted exclusive access to the fight against London's phone theft epidemic. Metropolitan Police Chief Sir Mark Rowley is calling on the government to turn stolen phones into worthless bricks and may have an ally in Apple.
This business model that these criminals are running depends on the fact that your stolen phone, even though it's locked, can be reactivated because of the security flaws within it. We've been putting pressure on the tech companies. Really pleased Apple have made some progress on their technology, which looks like it's having an effect on their phones.
And President Trump vows to hit Iran very hard as the US launches fresh strikes against military targets in a bid to punish Iran for pulling out of peace talks.
What happens? But we hit them hard yesterday, and we're going to hit them again hard today in case you miss it, in case you don't turn on your television set.
And Ryanair, can you believe this, is under investigation by the UK's competition watchdog after charging parents to sit next to their children on board.
Now, we've got a really interesting short film coming up made by Mark White about mobile phone thefts and what police are doing to crack down. Of course, it's been in the news a lot recently. Various celebrities having had their phones stolen, including Morgan McSweeney, but it is a massive
Chief of Staff of the Prime Minister and another government minister. But we are the phone theft capital of Europe. And there's an important breakthrough because Apple has indicated they will change, don't ask me to explain how they do it, but to change the technology, which effectively means that people will not be able to reactivate the phone. So if you lose your phone, if it's nicked, you can get it, it's locked. Thieves have been able to use there's a way to reactivate it. Apple say they're going to stop that. That is a massive breakthrough.
Because if they can't resell it, they've got no value.
And as the Metropolitan Police Commissioner says, it becomes a worthless brick. You need the other phone companies to follow suit. And let's be honest, it cannot be beyond the wit of these expensive mobile phone companies that make billions of pounds in profits to implement a very simple technology.
Well, it shows you where their priorities are, because obviously if people do get their phones stolen, they have to buy another one. Whereas we've had, tragic cases of parents who've been bereaved, their children have died, and they haven't been allowed access to their social media history, for example. So it's very clear where some of these companies' priorities lie. But this is a good step forward, we hope.
It really is, and the Metropolitan Police have been putting pressure on, and I think it's a really, really important breakthrough. So tell us what you think. I bet you know someone's had their phone nicked, certainly had mine nicked. Send your vote with your views, post your comments and your thoughts by visiting
gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's your 60-second news update with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you, 9:30. The headlines from the newsroom this hour. Police used water cannon against rioters on the outskirts of North Belfast last night in response to a second evening of disorder prompted by Monday's knife attack. The main flashpoint was Glengormley, where men dressed all in black and wearing face coverings targeted police with projectiles. 12 officers were injured and 16 people were arrested. The NHS in England will publish data today for the first time showing the scale of so-called corridor care, where patients are treated in inappropriate settings in hospitals. That includes the use of converted offices or chairs in hallways. The NHS says data being transparent about the issue could help trusts tackle it. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, is using and urging the Home Secretary to force mobile phone companies to make stolen devices harder to use. He says a data-sharing partnership with Apple is already making a difference, with thefts where phones are stolen down 18% year on year. US and Iran have launched fresh strikes across the Middle East for a second day, raising fears that a fragile ceasefire is starting to break down. Washington says it hit military, surveillance and radar sites in northern Iran before Tehran fired back on American bases in Bahrain, Kuwait and Jordan. And here, people could be banned from railway stations for up to a year for persistent antisocial behaviour. Train companies have described the new powers as a first line of defence to protect passengers and staff before matters escalate to formal criminal proceedings. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at 10.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
So for a second night, there was unrest on the streets of Belfast after a Sudanese asylum seeker, Heidi Al-Odid, was charged with attempted murder following a vicious knife attack on Monday evening.
Well, the police were forced to use a water cannon against demonstrators in Northern Ireland after masked protesters threw bricks and bottles at police near a migrant hotel.
Comes as it's revealed the suspect travelled to Northern Ireland from Dublin before having his asylum claim fast-tracked under a controversial Home Office scheme which was introduced by the Home Secretary at the time, Suella Braverman.
Well, Jonathan Hall, the independent reviewer of terror legislation, has called immigration a national security issue.
Ultimately, national security is the health of the nation, and having a stable nation where people feel they can go about their business. At the moment, there are people who happen to be black and brown, but as British as you and me, who probably feel they can't go about their business. And that is destabilising to the nation. So I think it's absolutely legitimate to talk about immigration.
I think that's a really important intervention by him. He's independent, appointed by the government, but he's independent. He's a lawyer. He is linking these mass levels of migration to national security. And why don't we get politicians saying the same thing?
Well, I agree. And I think a lot of GB News viewers will be saying, well, no kidding. If you don't secure your borders, that is a massive security issue. And in his remarks, which were reported in The Telegraph, he kind of implied that we should start thinking about immigration as a security issue as well as an economic issue, a housing issue. But it seems to me that the problem we've got here is that politicians have seen it as a national security issue last over those considerations, rather than it should be the first consideration of securing your borders.
And the front page of the Times, the UK has returned only one asylum seeker to Ireland after they crossed the Irish border, as the government prepares to intensify efforts to crack down on the route being used as a backdoor for illegal migration. And because of the Common Travel Area, which has been in force since 1922, the time of Irish independence, there are effectively no restrictions, no checks between the so-called border, which is over 300 miles long, by the way, between south and north, which is why people can just go through with almost unfettered.
Indeed. Well, we can now speak to our GB News national reporter, Charlie Peters, who's been on the ground in Belfast and witnessed some of that violence last night. Charlie, bring us up to date this morning.
Well, Miriam, Andrew, how much the police would have wished for this weather last night. Very much the downpour after the fiery scenes last night. They were the only people who could bring some of the wetness yesterday. The police service of Northern Ireland firing that water cannon towards rioting protesters, but nature's doing its part today to keep people indoors. And yesterday it was quite a stark and violent confrontation here where we are, about 13 kilometres northwest of Belfast, in an area called Newton Abbey, just on the Antrim Road. As I'm looking now towards the Sandy Nose roundabout, that's where we first witnessed clashes between those rioting protesters and the police service. They arrived in their armoured Land Rovers and with that water cannon behind, and as about 200 masked people, mostly young men, many of them children or young teenagers, they approached the lines of the police. There were 2 warnings issued by police officers that violence would be used if they did not disperse, and then after that they cleared the lines and pushed forward after some rioters were seen throwing mortar, throwing bricks and other items towards the police officers. Behind me now it's another morning in Northern Ireland with a burnt out building that we are visiting. This building, derelict property on a residential street. Everywhere else is total calm, but this is sort of a monument to the violence that happened last night. It's a building gutted by flames. There's also behind me a Volkswagen that belongs to a different gentleman on this street. That has been destroyed as well, also burnt out. You see a bin inside it. To be honest, Miriam and Andrew, there are quite a few people here who are quite lucky to still have their bins available yesterday. Such was the use of what was available around them to be used in that destruction yesterday, in which 12 police officers have been injured. There have also been 16 arrests linked to the disorder last night. Compare that to 2 nights ago. We had just a handful of arrests, a couple in the day as well, a couple also being charged in relation to that disorder we saw on Tuesday night. Several residential properties set on fire. Many cars as well, of course. That glider bus costing the best part of £1 million, that was burnt on Tuesday evening as well. Yesterday, being amongst the disorder, being able to speak to people involved, approaching them without our cameras, as you'd expect, because they would have smashed them pretty much instantly. We're able to speak to some of the people who were not wearing masks, who were standing on the side of the disorder, but very much supporting it. And I was struck by the language that they used, many of the people there. One young woman told me that she absolutely supported the destruction of residential properties where migrants were living, that she supported a list that was going around yesterday in WhatsApp groups and on social media identifying houses of multiple occupancy that she said she would be happy for those houses to be targeted. And of course she checked we weren't recording as she said that, and as she said it, others around her were nodding along, saying they agreed with that as well. Many people on this street this morning who were not involved in the disorder saying they were appalled by it. One woman walked past us and told us she never cries, but last night and this morning she has, distressed by what she witnessed. Just want to close with this. I mean, the number of people I've spoken to, both involved and not involved with the disorder, they all said that there has been a total collapse in the state's legitimacy on immigration, some of that being borne out by the common travel area, and what they feel is a political solution that is not being delivered on asylum seekers and some of the processes that are taking place with people being able to live in Northern Ireland and, of course, the mainland United Kingdom. Because there is that lack of legitimacy, that is why they say they have taken to the streets, and why many people are supporting the rioting and some of its devastating and vicious consequences.
OK, Charlie, that's Charlie Peters in Belfast. That's extraordinary language, isn't it?
Absolutely. Collapse in the state's legitimacy on immigration.
It's years. It's just not happening just in Northern Ireland, though, is it? It's happening across this island.
And perhaps the response is different in Northern Ireland because of the history and the fact that there is still a lot of sectarianism, whether it's under the surface.
The British troops patrolling streets until, what was it, 1999, when we had the Northern Ireland
and as you said earlier, the only place in the UK where water cannon are allowed, and perhaps for good reason. But on the other hand, you've got these innocent people who are being burnt out of their homes. You've got nothing to do with this case, who may be here legitimately. It's a horrible, horrible situation, but politicians have allowed to get it out of control.
And I'm not sure the politicians in Northern Ireland are speaking the right language. Let's speak to political commentator in Northern Ireland, John Coulter. John, morning to you.
Good morning, folks.
I've been very struck when Michelle O'Neill, the First Minister, she's talked constantly condemning the violence. And as somebody pointed out, I think it was in the Telegraph today, this is the same Michelle O'Neill who a few years ago was stating that there was no alternative to the IRI campaign of murder and bombings that killed thousands back during the Troubles. And yet here she is condemning people horrified by what happened on their streets because they saw it on social media. There just seems, perhaps some people think there's a contradiction here.
I'd go as far as to say there's a bit of a hypocrisy in provisional Sinn Féin, given the fact that for 30-odd years we had sectarian conflict here in Northern Ireland. And as a reporter who covered much of that, the last thing I want to see, having seen the scenes of violence over the last 2 nights, is another generation of racial violence erupting in Northern Ireland. I think the reality that politicians across the divide have to face here, not just in Northern Ireland, but right across the UK, is we cannot fix the immigration crisis with a sticky plaster. We need radical surgery. And specifically in Northern Ireland, as your previous reporter alluded to the common travel area, we need, unfortunately, the reintroduction or an introduction of a very hard border and very tough security checks of people coming from the Irish Republic into Northern Ireland.
Well, John, can we stop you there? Are you saying, John, can I just press you on this? Do you mean you would have an armed presence on the border?
Yes, it has got to the stage where a sticky plaster solution to the problem of immigration needs radical surgery, not the sticky plaster that we have at the present minute. Earlier on one of your earlier shows, we had the Secretary of State, Hilary Benn, talking about some of the measures that they feel the Labour government was bringing in. Those are just sticky plasters. What we need is an iron fist approach to illegal immigration. And can I stress that very clearly, folks? Illegal immigration. We've got to, as well, implement a security policy that protects the genuine asylum seekers who have fled persecution in their homelands. They're here legitimately, and they're making a contribution to Northern Ireland life and the wider UK life. The big problem with the rioting that has happened at the present minute over these last 2 nights is the fact that basically all immigrants have been tarred with the same brush. And that's a very dangerous situation because many asylum seekers who have come here legitimately have made a very positive contribution, for example, to the National Health Service. But let's look at it in a UK-wide situation. We've just had the celebrations and commemorations for D-Day and the beaches on France. The problem lies with the French. They're not doing enough to stop the small boats armada coming over.
Mr. Coulter, I'm so sorry. We are going to have to stop you there. We are out of time, but thank you so much for speaking to us this morning.
That is absolutely fascinating because that was a complete contradiction of what the guests we had on yesterday said. We cannot have a hard border. That's
right. This is the big problem in Northern Ireland, isn't it? It's so much more than just a border. It's much more than a technical solution, isn't it? There's all sorts of other implications.
I mean, that common travel has been there since 1922.
And it would reopen all sorts of arguments to do that, but perhaps it's necessary.
Now up next, Keir Starmer dodges questions on tax rises as pressure grows about how Labour will fund its defence plans, which we thought we were getting that defence investment plan today, but guess what, we're not. But first...
Why not get away with it all? Get away from it all. That's what I meant to say.
Well, that's what the Prime Minister should do.
Indeed, that was a Freudian slip there, Andrew. Here's the forecast for your European destinations.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. High pressures building in for much of Europe to bring plenty of sunshine. It's especially warm through the Canary Islands through the rest of this week. Temperatures climbing towards the high 20s across Tenerife. Also quite warm in Portugal as well as Italy. Temperatures climbing to the low 30s here. There's a risk of thunderstorms across Greece, particularly in the afternoons, and that risk does continue into the weekend. But otherwise, it looks pretty warm and pretty sunny if you're heading away. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
All the things that we might not think about when we think about a pint of beer, all the things that go into running a pub like this one. So I'll hand you the microphone, you tell us while I have a go at this. Don't judge me too harshly, Dawn.
Amazing. So obviously people don't take into effect that the energy costs and the raw material costs, also the packaging, overheads and the tax hikes. So when we're pulling a pint of beer, we have to think about the cost that's gone into making the beer and the rises in that. We also have to think about the overheads, the staff, the electrics which are plumbed in to pouring a pint. This obviously is very astronomical to pubs because if it increases, we're therefore going to have to put that onto the consumer, making the pint of beer more expensive.
GB News, the People's Channel. GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
You can't help wondering if that's what Prince William, future king, of course, is sort of planning for the future, whether that's the sort of slightly more laid-back attitude towards modern life.
Yes, I mean, I think we're going to see a huge change in the type of monarchy we have when he comes to the throne. We can very much see that King Charles is his mother's son. King Charles very much regards the Coronation Act as a sacrament, that it's essentially akin to becoming a priest, something that you do for life, much as the Queen Elizabeth felt it was too, a deeply sacred spiritual bond, a covenant between God and himself and the people. We know that that is not really the way that Prince William regards monarchy as well. I personally think, for example, that Prince William will become the first king to abdicate.
GB News, the People's Channel. Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
I thought the film, which Spielberg did, didn't somehow strike the right note.
So this would be the way I felt about High Society, the musical. It's glossy, it's beautiful, it's impressive, but you feel a little bit distant from it. War Horse, you are in there. Fantastic humour, that brings you in, you laugh with them, you care about them. So even when they're in the trenches and Albert makes a friend, they're bantering about girlfriends and things like that. You absorb how arbitrary and terrible war is, decisions made by people far away, young lads just shoved over to run horse charges
and it's happening now, Stefan, let's be honest.
Absolutely.
What you're describing is happening now.
Well, this is why it's resonating so much, because you're sitting there going, what is the point? It's so beautifully done. I cannot recommend it enough.
Where?
This one is on at the National Theatre. It's Come Back Home, where it started almost 20 years ago.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back, 7 minutes to 10. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Prime Minister yesterday refused to rule out further tax rises to pay for increased defence spending.
Well, this comes as the Chancellor warned that pressures to fund the sector were only going in one direction, that she may end up raising taxes to fund it.
I don't buy it. City AM editor Simon Hunt, who's the City editor at City AM, joins us. Simon, this is all to do with the Defence Investment Plan. It was due to be published last autumn. There was talk it was going to be published today. It's not happened. Talk it might be published tomorrow. The Speaker's not having that because he says Parliament has to be sitting. But can you really conceive that the government is going to raise taxes even further when you consider what political difficulties they're in and the tax burden is already at a record high on businesses and individuals?
Well, indeed, as you say, it's sort of quite staggering that this is what the government is looking at now. We have seen a sort of repeated pattern over the last couple of years. At the general election, Labour promised not to put up taxes. They then did pretty immediately afterwards in the inaugural budget. But they then said at the time, well, this is the last time, don't worry, guys, we're not going to do this anymore. A year later, they put up taxes again. And, Rachel Reeves signalled that this was really, really the last time this time. And here we are a few months on, and there is talk again about the Treasury putting up taxes. And it does seriously undermine the sort of fiscal credibility of what the government is doing. There is a sort of repeat pattern here. Whenever there is any policy pressure, the government immediately looks to try and find a new way of raising taxes rather than manage its existing spending.
Simon, perhaps this is a bit of a deep question for not quite 10 o'clock in the morning, but can democracy solve this problem? In a society where people vote every 5 years for the things that they want now, lower taxes, more spending on the NHS, more spending on roads, rather than the things that are necessary long-term, controlling public spending, spending on armed forces. How do we solve this in a democracy when politicians just want to be elected on a mandate of what's popular?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly, if you poll most people, they want to pay less taxes but see improved government spending, and those two things can't happen simultaneously. So, yes, it is a problem. But, I mean, unless politicians are frank with people, you will see a sort of protracted period of political instability that we've seen over the past 5 or so years, where, even a year or two into a new government's term in office, there's already talk about, leadership challenges or them losing the next election. This would be an endless cycle if it's not the case that parties promise and deliver on the promises that they promise at general elections.
So, I mean, there is an alternative, of course. They could cut spending and they could cut the bloated welfare bill. They tried to cut £5 billion last year. The talk is they want to find 13 billion extra defence. They could start with that $5 billion in the welfare bill.
Indeed, and there was a sort of an attempt at that several months ago, although the government ultimately bowed to pressure from backbenchers and decided not to pare back any welfare spending. So that seemed pretty impossible now, given the sort of political pressure from within the party. But there are also, there are lots of other policy options available. There's most economists will tell you that the triple lock is a
Simon, I'm sorry to have to interrupt you at that point, but we are being told that it is
Miriam
time
and I
to
will
go.
fall out over that. She wants to get rid of it and I don't.
Well, coming up, we've got lots more on Britain's Newsroom. Don't go anywhere. You're watching GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News each and every week.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The A83 at Locknell Street, Lochgilphead, is restricted due to emergency roadworks. Speed restrictions persist on the M4 between Cardiff Gate and Pont Abraham. 10-minute delays occur on the A38 southbound in Derby and at the A34 northbound exit slip to the A423 north of Kennington. Avoid the M40 southbound in Warwickshire due to a vehicle fire. On the M25 clockwise at Junction 8 in Surrey, lane closures cause 15-minute delays. And on the trains, disruption continues through Manchester-Oxford Road on East Midlands Railway and Northern services. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
£76,543 and 21 pence in tax-free cash could be yours this summer. That's totally tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. And remember, because it's totally tax-free cash, you'll get to keep every single penny for a chance to win. Text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
At the stroke of midnight, the news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
day in, day out. Forget stuffy late night TV shows. We're giving you a front row ticket to the centre of the political universe.
Because breaking news doesn't wait for the morning.
And neither do we. Join us for one of the most controversial and volatile times of politics in human history.
A very big story.
Big story over here.
You won't get this anywhere else. The Late Show Live at midnight, every night.
Only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's 10 o'clock on Thursday, the 11th of June. We're live across the United Kingdom on Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Fiery clashes erupted yet again between protesters and riot police in a second night of disorder over the brutal stabbing in Belfast on Sunday night.
While demonstrators were met with water cannon and plastic bullets as they attempted to march towards a Belfast asylum hotel.
And it comes as it's revealed the Sudanese man accused of attempted murder was allowed in through the asylum fast-track scheme brought in by the Tory government in 2023.
Well, it's another day of violent outrage and anger, and it's another morning in Northern Ireland standing by a building gutted by flames as these protests continue to expand.
And GB News has been granted exclusive access to the fight against London's phone theft epidemic. Met Police Chief Sir Mark Rowley is calling on the government to turn stolen phones into worthless bricks.
This business model that these criminals are running depends on the fact that your stolen phone, even though it's locked, can be reactivated because of the security flaws within it. We've been putting pressure on the tech companies. Really pleased Apple have made some progress on their technology, which looks like it's having an effect on their phones.
Not before time, you could say. Now, President Trump has vowed to hit Iran very hard as the US launches fresh strikes against military targets. He says to punish Iran, which says it will pull out of peace talks.
What happens? But we hit them hard yesterday, and we're going to hit them again hard today, in case you miss it, in case you don't turn on your television set.
Elsewhere, Ryanair is under investigation by the UK's competition watchdog after they charged parents who wanted to sit next to their children. Maybe some parents pay not to sit next to their children.
Before the show, we teased this airline who's got into controversy. And we said, I wonder if you can guess which airline it is. I bet you if you asked a crowded room which airline is charging mums and dads to sit close next to their children, you'd have said Ryanair.
They are notorious for charging you everything they possibly can, from baggage to obviously seats. And of course, parents need to sit next to young children.
I don't want a 3-year-old next to me.
Well, also the 3-year-old will may not enjoy takeoff and landing, for example, and may need their parent. Extraordinary. But of course, if you check in too late on these flights, you can't actually get seats next to each other. So maybe when you're booking, the answer would be to declare that you need seats next to you. I don't know.
And that's when I think they charge you.
Yeah.
Now, Michael O'Leary is the owner of Ryanair. He's one of those businessmen who's got the skin of a rhinoceros. He simply doesn't seem to care.
And he makes money, and you've got to kind of respect that.
And it's a successful company, and I try to avoid using it if I can. And apparently a lot of its planes run on time.
Well, my children are teenagers now. They'd probably pay not to sit next to me during a flight.
Her children, they have said so. As ever, we'd like to know what you think. Send your views, post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/you're safe. But first, here's the news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom at just gone 10 o'clock. Well, the top story, 12 police officers have been injured and 16 arrests made after a second night of unrest in Northern Ireland following Monday's knife attack in Belfast. Police used water cannon against rioters on the outskirts of the city in response to that second evening. The main flashpoint was in Glengormley, where men dressed all in black and wearing face coverings targeted the police with projectiles. Northern Ireland Secretary Hilary Benn says there was less disorder than the night before, but condemned what he called racist thuggery after homes, cars and a bus were set alight earlier this week. The family of the victim, Stephen Ogilvie, says that they are disgusted by the disorder after Hadi Aladid appeared in court, charged with attempted murder. And our national reporter Charlie Peters is in Belfast for us, where police have made those arrests and now sent extra officers in another night of violence.
Protesters were pushed back by a water cannon after they approached police lines in riot gear, threw mortar and bricks and other objects, including bins set on fire, towards police officers. One derelict property on this road has been set on fire and gutted by flames. There's also a burned out car in the road. We're hearing this morning that 12 police officers have been injured and there have been 16 arrests after last night's disorder.
In other news, the NHS in England will publish data today for the first time showing the scale of so-called corridor care. That's where patients are treated in unsuitable hospital spaces, including converted offices and even chairs in hallways. Health leaders say publishing the figures will give a clearer picture of how widespread the problem is. The NHS says being transparent about the issue could help trusts tackle it. Britain's biggest police force is pushing the Home Secretary to force phone companies to make stolen devices harder to use. Met Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley says that stolen phones should become unusable bricks, so they're no longer valuable to criminals. The force has started sharing data with Apple to track whether stolen handsets are reconnected to networks after being taken. The Met Force says phone thefts and robberies have fallen in recent years, but handsets remain a major driver of street crime in London. The US and Iran have launched fresh strikes across the Middle East for a second day, raising fears that the fragile ceasefire is starting to break down. Washington says it hit military, surveillance and radar sites in southern Iran after Donald Trump warned Tehran it had taken too long to agree to a peace deal. Iran then fired back on American bases in Bahrain and Kuwait for a second day in a row and claimed to have targeted a US command centre in Jordan. The UN Secretary-General says that the region's being pulled deeper into crisis, warning the ceasefire is now looking more like a lesser fire. Here, repeat offenders could be banned from railway stations for up to a year under a new scheme being rolled out across Britain. Train operators will be able to issue railway behaviour notices to people causing repeated antisocial behaviour. Breaching those notices could lead to arrest for trespass. The Rail Delivery Group says trials showed a clear reduction in repeat offending when they were issued. And thousands of prison cell windows across the country will be fitted with steel grills to stop drone smuggling, drugs, weapons and phones into jails. The Ministry of Justice says up to 13,000 heavy-duty grills will be installed by spring next year at a cost of £35 million. Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy says drone smuggling fuels violence, debt and disorder in prisons. Prison governors have welcomed the investment, saying illegal items make rehabilitation harder and put staff and prisoners at risk. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news in half an hour. Now let's get back to Miriam and the other guy.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. It's 7 minutes past 10. We're live across the United Kingdom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
I think they've been getting in touch, Miriam.
They probably have, but I haven't actually had time to look at Andrew yet because we've been so focused.
I can't, because I can't log on.
It's a wonderful excuse, Andrew.
It is.
If we teach you how to do it, you won't be able to use it anymore.
No, not doing it. Now, we've had a second night of unrest on the streets of Belfast after that Sudanese asylum seeker was charged with attempted murder following that brutal knife attack earlier in the week.
Well, police were forced to use water cannon against demonstrators in the Northern Ireland capital after masked protesters threw bricks and bottles at police near a migrant hotel.
It's worth making the point, the police are only permitted to use water cannons in Northern Ireland because of the province's history. When Boris Johnson invested in water cannons, the then Home Secretary, Theresa May, said, you ain't using them.
Well, this comes, of course, as it is revealed that the suspect travelled to Northern Ireland from Dublin before having his asylum claim fast-tracked under a controversial Home Office scheme.
Let's speak to GBNews national reporter Charlie Peters, who's there for us in Belfast in the eye of the storm. Charlie.
Well, I'm actually in Glengormley, about 13 kilometres northwest of Belfast, in the Newton Abbey area, just on the Antrim Road, where so much of that violence took place last night. Just about 200 metres ahead of me is the Sandy Knowes roundabout, where there was a clash between the police service and the rioting protesters last night. We witnessed about 200 of them gathering a half an hour walk away and then moving in this direction, many of them masked, many of them very much looking forward to an encounter with the police. And they were going towards the hotel on the Chimney Corner that's been used for housing asylum seekers in recent years. The police were prepared to protect that location, but there's anger on this street this morning because the police service pushed many of those protesters and rioters onto this residential street, and that has had some very damaging implications because the anger very quickly spilled out into violence. Just over my shoulder here is a property. It's a derelict property, but it was burned out last night. The building gutted by flames. It's another morning of going around Northern Ireland seeing buildings that are no longer usable after arson attacks and violence and protest. And just earlier we saw a vehicle that was on the road and had been burned out last night. That's just been towed away in the last half hour or so. Also spoken to one local resident called Paul Sharkey, who lives on this street, just a couple of houses down. He told me that one of the vans that was set on fire was actually pushed into his property. Paul's probably watching GB News right now. He barely slept a wink last night, he said, and he was watching the footage on our stream as it was happening while he was watching the protesters and rioters coming down this street towards his property. That must have been quite a terrifying situation for him to be in. And as a result of the disorder last night, we now know that 12 police officers were injured. There have been 16 arrests, adding to the handful of arrests that were made the night before and in the day. Yesterday in Belfast city centre, Miriam and Andrew, I could tell you it was obvious that something was going to happen. It was like the pandemic all over again. So quiet was the city centre. Absolutely nobody on the streets apart from the few police officers driving around, some kids on their scooters. That was it. And we knew that that was the absence of the normal and the presence of the abnormal. People were gathering and preparing for something to happen. We just didn't really know where it might be. There were so many rumours about what might take place, but it happened outside of the city centre. Some of the people we spoke to yesterday who were part of that protest, some of them masked, some of them without any face coverings, told us that they came here because they wanted to target that asylum hotel, but also they didn't want to be, getting other people caught up in the violence. Well, considering the damage done here, I'm not sure that argument stands up particularly strongly the morning after. It all got out of hand very quickly. As of course you said, the water cannon was deployed. We saw items being thrown towards the police, of course, mortars and bins set on fire, pushed towards them as well. So the message coming from the police and politicians, reiterated for the third day in a row now, is please stop, please process with legitimate political debate. But when you speak to people here, they say that the opportunity for political debate has gone away because there's no legitimacy with the state on immigration, and that's being supported by some of the details that's coming out now about how this suspect was able to reach the United Kingdom in 2023, how quickly a visa was granted, and also more generally details we're getting about asylum seekers being granted refuge in Britain from Sudan, how swift that process was. A lot of people pointing to those details and saying that the state just does not have their interests at the forefront of their perspective.
Very interesting. Charlie Peters, thank you very much for that report from just outside Belfast.
I'm going to talk to Professor Anthony Gleeves, who is a security and intelligence expert. Professor Gleeves, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Very disturbing for those of us who covered the Northern Ireland troubles for many years, for you who's been commenting on security, to see this great province in flames for a second day.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the scenes of disorder over 2 nights, 12 cops injured, people terrorised, innocent people terrorised. That is completely unacceptable in any part of our great country, and it's got to be stopped. We note that the government's independent reviewer of counter-terrorist legislation, Jonathan Hall, KC, said yesterday this is a national security problem, and he was referring to uncontrolled immigration. People like me, and indeed people like yourselves, have been saying this for years. Control of our borders is absolutely critical to dealing with the lack of law and order on our streets. We're seeing it time and time again, and it will carry on until the government acts decisively to control properly immigration, and it must do what it takes. I myself think that the Rwanda scheme now needs to be reintroduced. I was sceptical of it at first. I thought there were better ways of dealing and cheaper ways of dealing with the problem. But it's clear that to stop people coming illegally, the alleged perpetrator seems to have been in Northern Ireland legally, but may well have come to Northern Ireland illegally. Now, you can get caught up in all the legal niceties about this. The fact is that a majority of people in this country want borders controlled. And if the Rwanda scheme is the best way of doing it, it may not be perfect, the government should think again. After all, Sakir has U-turned on so many things, on so many occasions. He can jolly well do a U-turn on this. But the second national security issue has to do with people from Elon Musk, Tommy Robinson, down, to be stopped from using the social media to organise these sorts of riots. I mean, everybody looking at the shocking film sees that we're dealing essentially with stormtroopers. These are people in uniform, masked. They are highly organised. They know what they're doing. They know where to go to cause trouble. And the organisation of this sort of violence is also a national security problem. So these two things need attention: control of our borders and also disruption of people who do not have the good of the United Kingdom at heart and are exploiting young people. Like your colleague Tom Harwood, I thought, very perceptively pointed out to the age of those doing this violence and said, well, some of them, may think they're just in it for fun. They may think they're in it for fun, but terrorising people...
But it does seem... That's true, and I'm sure there is an element. There always is. Young men enjoy rioting. That's just a fact. But there does also seem to be tacit approval from the older generation. We just heard our national reporter Charlie Peters talking about how he spoke to some of the protesters behind the scenes, off camera, who weren't wearing masks, who were happy to admit that they fully supported the burning down of these buildings. So yes, it is young people carrying out the violence, but with the approval of the older generation, it seems.
Well, I think that is one of the two big national security problems, that too many people have lost faith, both in the Conservative government and now the Labour government, to control borders and control immigration and to deal with those people who are coming to the United Kingdom from different cultures. Whichever way you dress it, people who come from war-torn countries who see terrible acts of savagery, most of them are fleeing because they don't want to be involved. But some will have seen things that make them feel violence is legitimate. But whether these are immigrants, migrants, whether these are people who may be born in Britain but nevertheless carry the culture of violent societies within them, here the government has to act, and it has got to be realistic. It's got to do something big. And Sakir needs to say, you're going to stop the channel crossings, even he's got to put a net over them. And they need, in my view, to go to Rwanda and ditto. Yes, I know Brexit has made it more complicated. There's no question about that. But we are where we are. These people should not even have been in France in the first place. Yeah. They're a French problem. They're definitely not a Northern Ireland problem. And if we are to keep our country secure in the future and keep the vast majority of British people are decent people. They don't want to see innocent families terrorised. They don't want to see a disorder on our streets, but they want firm action.
Professor Anthony Glees, thank you so much for coming on Britain's Newsroom this morning.
Always good. There is more chance of finding a man on the moon than Keir Starmer backing down on Rwanda. It was the first thing he did in government. It was pig-headed, stupid, ignorant, and it's because I think they feared in the pit of their stomach it might succeed.
Of course, the entirety, pretty much, of the national media also opposed that plan, and it was relatively... not you, I'm sure.
We're not, and the Daily Mail supporters...
I'm sure, and a lot of people in the polls. It's only in hindsight that people have realised it was a good idea. Well, moving on.
Britain's largest police force, that's the Met, is urging the Home Secretary to require phone companies to do more to stop mobile phones being reused.
Well, the move forms part of Met Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley's campaign to reduce phone theft by making stolen devices effectively worthless to criminals.
And it seems that Apple is on the way to doing it.
Well, Sir Mark spoke on the business model behind the phone theft epidemic earlier on GB News.
This business model that these criminals are running depends on the fact that your stolen phone, even though it's locked, can be reactivated because of the security flaws within it. We've been putting pressure on the tech companies. Really pleased Apple have made some progress on their technology, which looks like it's having an effect on their phones.
Well, that's GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White has been granted exclusive access to the Met's high-speed interceptor teams as they stepped up efforts to tackle the capital's mobile phone theft epidemic.
We're out with one of the Met's most elite units. These interceptors are now being used in the battle against phone thieves. A motorbike has just triggered their automatic number plate recognition cameras, suggesting a possible cloned plate.
There's a good chance it's probably a stolen bike, unlikely to stop, so get more units, box it properly.
Right, so you think towards Lewisham way, do you?
Stolen bikes are used regularly by those involved in street-level phone robberies. They've caught up with the bike and are preparing to stop it.
Have you had your plate copied or something before? You've been stopped recently?
It turns out he's actually the victim of a cloned plate. A criminal is likely driving around on a stolen bike using a copy of this man's reg number.
We just gave him some advice to make his bike a little bit more distinctive to him.
Yeah.
Like I said he was an Arsenal fan. If you can get an Arsenal sticker or something, stick it on the back of his back box, then if it's a case of us getting behind it and then saying, oh, it's got an Arsenal badge on it, it would save us even stopping it. Got a right-hand side indication.
In South London, the interceptors are about to pull over the car in front to check the 4 young occupants.
You got a driving licence, you at all?
All 4 are on the criminal database for previous offences. The car was allegedly involved in a violent incident in recent days. Out of an abundance of caution, as they're checking the 4 people inside this vehicle, they remain handcuffed to allow the interceptors to carry out those checks to look for any signs of criminality.
MD, I've got an orange KTM saying stop.
The bike, which has failed to stop, narrowly missed a pedestrian as it sped down the main road. The interceptors catch up with it at a set of traffic lights. The rider is unceremoniously dragged from his bike and detained. Across the capital, the interceptor team's highly skilled vehicle pursuit officers are responding to increasing levels of criminality linked to the trade in stolen phones.
Just want to close a bit of distance.
Scotland Yard has significantly stepped up operations against those involved in an increasingly lucrative trade in stolen devices.
These devices have gone in years gone by from a couple of £100 to well over £1,000. The economy of scale is there for criminals. They see the opportunity. For us, we've had to respond to that quite quickly, and in London we've adapted very quickly to the issue. I mean, 2024 we saw 80,000 phones stolen here in London, and then so far this year, I'm pleased to say, in Westminster we're seeing a 55% reduction in week on week of phones being stolen now compared to the same weeks last year.
In the Met's latest enforcement operation, dozens of addresses have been raided and phone theft suspects arrested. 3,500 e-bikes and scooters have been seized in London since January. Now Apple has also agreed a partnership with police to share more data to help track and identify where stolen mobiles reappear in circulation. Mark White, GB News.
Fascinating stuff.
Really good stuff, yeah, good stuff. Always good stuff from Mark White now. And we're going to get Mark on the programme later on to talk about it as well. Now, after the second night of protests in Belfast, there's questions being raised over the land border with the Republic of Ireland, with the absence of one, frankly. People smugglers are exploiting the open border to illegally transport more asylum seekers into mainland Britain.
Well, we'll be going through that and more with Nigel Nelson and Carol Malone. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
We can allow.
Stop.
We can allow.
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight on the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace to
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no, because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back. It's 27 minutes past 10. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
We have our panel here. We have Carol Malone, who's never knowingly not noisy, and Nigel Malone, who's never...
Yes, Nigel in there. Nigel Nelson, before any inferences are made.
On every front page, apart from the World Cup, is the continuing fallout, Nigel, from the Troubles. Terrible to see cities in Northern Ireland ablaze. The only part of the United Kingdom where the police can use water cannons to suppress the
Yep.
violence.
Boris Johnson tried, but
was
but
put
failed.
down by the rather hopeless Home Secretary Theresa May at the time. What do you make of it?
Well, I mean, the debate seems to have shifted now to the idea about what you do with the border.
Yeah.
What I don't quite get is that it would have made absolutely no difference in this specific case. Because if you'd had a hard border there would have been immigration officers, presumably. All the man who was arrested would have to have done is having flown from Paris to Dublin, get a bus not to Belfast but a bus to the border, and then apply for asylum there. And as we know, he was then given leave to remain as a refugee till 2028. So assuming that decision would have been made anyway, it would have made no difference to him coming into Northern Ireland. As far as actually the hard border goes, it's something the DUP have always wanted. It would drive a coach and horses through the Good Friday Agreement. The reason that both the EU and UK negotiators on the withdrawal agreement decided to keep it as it was because of the unique situation of Northern Ireland, 30 years of civil war.
Yeah.
You start putting a border there, you risk going back to that violence.
I get that, but what the terror chief in Ireland is saying is that this is a national security risk now. The numbers of immigrants coming through has increased hugely. I think it was 1,000 last year that came through. And immigration crimes are increasing and arrests are increasing. So I think, what they're saying is this is a kind of balancing out. What do you do? Because if you don't close it, the security of the state is at risk and you're allowing people in there who you don't know where they've come from and what they're capable of doing. There could be a threat to the state. So it is a problem. But I mean, I want to talk about the riots as well. The story now, we're not talking about what happened to Stephen Ogilvie anymore. He's been forgotten in all this now. But we're just now talking about the violence on the streets of Ireland. And, we can't pretend. We haven't covered it because, as far as we're concerned, it's new. But this is not new. This has been an increasing pattern of violence thanks to immigration on the streets of Ireland for a long time now. These are not the first arson attacks. They have been happening and detention centres have been burned, as have migrant hotels been burned. And that is because we are continuing to pretend the underlying crisis doesn't exist. These riots will continue until the government confronts the immigration numbers and the consequences of them, and they're not doing it.
And the two First Ministers, Nigel, they just keep talking about, naturally saying to the protesters, please stop. They are not dealing with what Malone's talking about, the huge pressures now caused in Northern Ireland about massive immigration.
It's not that massive. Bear in mind, not compared to here.
But the numbers are different. The population is different.
And it's a very small part of the United Kingdom. But people telling GB News and others, we're feeling strangers in our towns, people in strange clothes, different languages. They feel their own cultures are being subjugated. This is a problem that's being replicated all over this country, Nigel. And the Tories didn't get to grips with it, and this current lot haven't got to grips with it either. And we're seeing in Northern Ireland, this is a consequence now. This is, as Malone says, it's not so much just about what happened on Monday night. It's deep-seated resentment and anger about the massive increases in immigration and the problems it's causing.
But it's not just like a normal protest against immigration. I mean, these have definitely been racist attacks on different people. I mean, on Tuesday night, they attacked a Turkish barber. Well, what's a Turkish barber got to do with a Sudanese man who's been arrested? So certainly what all the ministers are saying in Northern Ireland, I mean, Naomi Long, the Justice Minister, she blamed it on online agitators who ramped the whole thing up. But what it does seem is that the protests have been going for anybody who is not white.
Nigel, this is not about social media protests. Everyone tries to blame what these riots on social.
Well, she knows her local community, so I would be prepared to listen to her to what she says.
This is about people's grievances about immigration not being listened to, being totally ignored, and it's people's anger repeatedly being told they're racist because they dare to complain about the massive amounts of immigrants that are coming into small communities. You say that Ireland is not big and the problem is not that big. It is. It's bigger there than it is here in real terms.
There's other things like unemployment and social divisions and so on.
They are smaller communities, and these people are being bussed into very small communities, and people are frightened frightened of them. People are saying they don't recognise their own cities, their own towns anymore. So this is people's anger at being told they're racist for daring to complain about it. And that will continue. The streets will continue to be like this until governments address this problem.
So how does burning a bus help?
It doesn't. It's anger. It's about anger. It does cause it doesn't.
And the anger is more general than just about this. That's my point.
We are going to have to leave it there, Carol and Nigel. We'll come back to you in an hour or so. But next, we've got your 60-second news update with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. Just after 10:30, the headlines this hour. As we were just hearing, police used water cannon against rioters on the outskirts of North Belfast last night in response to a second evening of disorder prompted by Monday's knife attack. The main flashpoint was Glengormley, where men dressed all in black and wearing face coverings targeted police with projectiles. 12 officers were injured and 16 arrests were made. Breaking this morning, nearly 3,000 patients a day were treated in hospital corridors or makeshift spaces in England last month, rather than in a bed or on a ward. It's the first time so-called corridor care figures have been published. Ministers say the practice is unsafe, but the NHS insists publishing the figures will help trusts tackle it. Met Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley is urging the Home Secretary to force mobile phone companies to make stolen devices harder to use. He says a data-sharing partnership with Apple is already making a difference, with threats where phones are stolen down 18% year-on-year. The US and Iran have launched a fresh strike across the Middle East for a second day, raising fears that a fragile ceasefire could be starting to break down. Washington says it hit military, surveillance and radar sites in southern Iran before Tehran returned fire. People could be banned from railway stations for up to a year for persistent antisocial behaviour. Train companies have described the new powers as a first line of defence to protect passengers and staff before matters escalate to formal criminal proceedings. Those are the latest headlines. A full roundup at 11.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Well, coming up next, fears of peace negotiations are in tatters as President Donald Trump vows to hit Iran hard again.
And we're going to tell you how many patients a day are facing corridor care in the NHS. Figures just released. Where's West Streeting, the former health secretary, when we needed? Nowhere to be seen. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A damp and overcast day for much of the UK. Weather fronts moved in overnight. It does look a little bit drier into tomorrow and even drier into the weekend. But for now, we've got a wet start out there for many of us, and the rain will persist through much of the day, bringing with it a lot of cloud too. So very little way in the way of sunshine to come. It will feel quite humid out there too, as we've got southerly winds. We're in what's known as the warm sector through much of today. So temperatures will be in the mid to high teens, but it will feel quite humid. I think you will notice a difference stepping out there. It will last through the night as well into Friday. Much of the rain does push away to the east throughout this evening, but it's still going to be quite a damp evening for much of Scotland, particularly across more western areas. Quite a lot of cloud around, a bit of a grey end to the day. A bit more in the way of showery rain across parts of Northern Ireland, so it could be a little bit brighter than it has been through much of the day into this evening. A similar story for southwestern areas of the UK. Into the southeast, where we're just closer to that rain, we're more likely to see a bit of a damp end to the day. But the bulk of the rain does push away to the east through much of the night, and in its place we just see some showery rain moving through. So more widely a drier night to come for many of us, but quite a lot of cloud around, and we hold on to that humid feel throughout much of the night. So temperatures not really falling away much overnight, still in the mid-teens for many of us to start the day. Quite close feeling overnight. Here's a weather front pushing into parts of the Republic of Ireland and then into Northern Ireland, pushing into Wales and central areas through lunchtime and into the afternoon, just bringing thicker cloud for a time and a risk of some rain. Showers will affect the far northwest. Elsewhere, probably is going to feel fairly dry. Very limited sunshine, however, but temperatures still climbing a little bit higher to the low 20s in the southeast. Have a good day.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Significant congestion is causing 1-hour delays on the M40 clockwise between junction 5 and 7 in Surrey. Additionally, speed restrictions continue to affect both directions on the M4 from Cardiff Gate to Pont Abraham, causing further delays. Motorists in Warwickshire should remain cautious due to a vehicle fire on the M40 southbound, restricting traffic to one lane. In North Tyneside, the A1 southbound has experienced a lane closure as a result of a collision, leading to traffic disruptions. On the railways, Avanti West Coast is facing service disruptions between Crewe and Stockport. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 21 minutes to 11. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Well, the US has been launching fresh strikes against Iran after Tehran downed a helicopter near the Straits of Hormuz.
Well, President Donald Trump warned that Iran would pay the price for failed negotiations with the US, marking a significant escalation in the war.
What happens? But we hit them hard yesterday, and we're going to hit them again hard today, in case you miss it, in case you don't turn on your television set.
Well, the US journalist Chapman Bell joins us now. Chapman, welcome as always to the studio. I feel like this headline could have been on any day between 28th of February and now. Things seem to go up again and down again.
Yeah, and considering this was going to be a quick war, right? While there is a fragile ceasefire still holding, there is a lot of back and forth still, and this is, the second night of attacks. Almost 50 Tomahawk cruise missiles launched in addition to other attacks on Iran. Iran, of course, retaliating on Kuwait and Bahrain and Jordan, where they're U.S. assets. A lot of these were intercepted, waiting to see if they did actually do any damage that is yet to be reported. But in addition to all of this, it continues, and Trump says that this is because they have taken too long to sign a peace agreement. But it's frustrating, I think, a lot of Americans. You look at his poll numbers right now, they're hovering around 35%.
Yeah, and I saw yesterday, Chapman, that the cost of living rise now in America is the highest for 3 years.
Yes, and
domestic politics is everything in the end for Trump.
Well, and it always comes down to the economy. Yeah. And this poll, this Reuters Ipsos poll, also found that only, I think, 22% of people approve of this high cost of living right now. And I can tell you, just on a personal level, I cannot think of anyone I've spoken to in America in the last several weeks on the telephone who has not commented about the high fuel prices there. Now, also in the Oval Office yesterday, Trump did say, he said, inflation, I love inflation. And he said, here's why, because when this war's over, we've been having a secret mission where we've been taking out millions of barrels of oil through the Strait of Hormuz.
Is that true?
Well, he then went on to say it's been part of a secret mission, and that they've taken 100 million barrels through the Strait of Hormuz under the cover of darkness with no light, because he says they've destroyed all their radar. And then he said, who doesn't know about this until now? Iran. And it's kind of interesting why you would, if this had been happening, why you would make it known to the world that this has been a secret mission you've been doing.
Can stop it.
Well, or can they? Who knows? Iran has said that they're going to close the Strait of Hormuz once again, but who actually controls it these days? Because Trump says he has a blockade and he controls it. So it's all reaching that point of what's actually happening, and is something happening in the background for peace negotiations.
And Israel is still bombing the hell out of southern Lebanon.
Yeah, that's right. And Netanyahu has actually called on people in Beirut and in Lebanon to rise up and fight against Hezbollah, trying to, to turn the tide there. But, Iran is not going to sign a peace agreement or stop their attacks until Israel stops, bombing Lebanon. So there's a lot of moving pieces in this, and, when and where this peace agreement's going to come through, who knows?
And the Israel question is possibly the hardest one for Trump to solve. We saw last week Netanyahu retaliating against Iran after those missile strikes, after Trump had said, I've told Netanyahu not to do this and he knows I'm the boss, or words to that effect. Well, clearly Netanyahu does not agree that Trump is the boss in this circumstance.
Yeah, I think the level of control over Israel is not as definitive as he seems to think. I mean, Israel's going to do what Israel thinks they need to do, and for the best of their country. However, I think there probably is a little bit where they do say, okay, you need to stop it now. But it's an ongoing chess game that's actually still causing a lot of issues around the world.
Israel knows that Iran is wedded to eradicating it from the map of the world.
Well, that's right.
So, and this is its best chance to wreak huge permanent damage on it.
Yeah, we always talk about it. It always comes down to rhetoric, and if you have this kind of talk, of course they're going to fear that they're being, threatened to be wiped off the face of the earth. Yeah. So they do have to defend themselves in some way.
I don't think it's as organised as a game of chess. That's all I can say.
No, maybe not.
I mean, these poll numbers are pretty shocking for Trump.
They are. I mean, 35% in this.
Did Biden ever go that low?
That's a good question. I need to check. What I will say is this is close to his lowest, and it's been hovering there for some time. And it's not just the overall approval rating. It is the approval rating that has to do with cost of living that is really damaging, I think, particularly as the U.S. is going into midterm elections soon. But Trump has said himself he doesn't care about the midterms. So
he is not able to stand again, which has... swings and roundabouts the American people.
Well, that's going to take a lot of people.
We'll have Chapman back to talk about that on another day. Thank you so much, Chapman Bell. Well, coming up next.
Should parents really have to pay extra to sit next to their children on a flight? Ryanair thinks so, but is now facing a watchdog investigation.
But first, if you're in search of some holiday sun and would like to fly on Ryanair, here's the forecast for our top European destinations.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello there. High pressures building in for much of Europe to bring plenty of sunshine. It's especially warm through the Canary Islands through the rest of this week. Temperatures climbing towards the high 20s across Tenerife. Also quite warm in Portugal as well as Italy. Temperatures climbing to the low 30s here. There's a risk of thunderstorms across Greece, particularly in the afternoons, and that risk does continue into the weekend. But otherwise, it looks pretty warm and pretty sunny if you're heading away. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Princess Anne and the way that she has brought up her family is really interesting, isn't it? Because, you've got daughter and son who've not taken on royal titles, who've just got on with their lives.
I think now, in retrospect, we can say it was an inspired decision of the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, not to have her husband receive a Grand Peerage title, which meant, of course, that her children would just be plain Mr. and Mrs. Zara is Mrs. Tyndall, he is Mr. Phillips, and that's allowed them actually to have a much more normal life, not being in the necessary glare that attaches when you have the HRH prefix to your name and become a duke or a duchess or whatever. And yes, they have had great lives in the private sector.
GB News, the People's Channel. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Dorothea, how does it feel being here today, joining other veterans?
It's marvellous, because for years after the war ended, nobody knew that women had even done anything during the war. And also, they suddenly discovered that, good heavens, women have got brains. They can think for themselves and for the country. And it was naturally assumed that everybody would willingly do their bit for England. And they would have. We had one purpose in life, which was to free the world from Nazism.
The People's Channel. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
To a lot of people, there's just a series of names, and they are to us. But suddenly we come to a name, and we knew that guy. This one down there, Daddy Circus. I served with him. I know what a lovely man he was. terrible waste that he dies. There's another guy, Lieutenant Fraden, who was my signals officer in the 2nd 4th Essex. Was transferred to the 2nd Essex when we were transferred to the Dorsets. He got killed by a sniper. What a wicked waste. Wicked waste. And then the powers that be are warming up for another one. Doesn't make sense. I bet God above is regretting giving man his free will. That's all I can think.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. It's 12 minutes to 11.
Someone has just said on social media, I could listen to Miriam Cates all day. I'm just about to put on social media. 2.5 hours is quite enough, actually.
You should be careful because I control the auto cue, Andrew. I could get you all sorts of... I could. Well, I could just leave you high and dry. Well, we won't do that. We get on, really. Well, it is... What time is it? 12 minutes to 11, and you're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Now, the Competition and Markets Authority has launched an investigation into Ryanair over charges parents must pay to sit with their children on flights.
Well, the authority is to determine whether or not this practice is in line with consumer law.
Who better to talk to about this than the man who knows everything about travel? It is Simon Calder, who is now, of course, at the Telegraph. Simon, good morning and lovely to see you. Simon, when I heard about this, I said straight away, I know which airline that will be. It will be Ryanair. Do you share my reaction?
Yes, I certainly do. They do things differently from all the other airlines. And by the way, I could listen to Miriam Cates all day as well.
Stop
anyway, moving on. So yes, here's the deal. The Civil Aviation Authority says that airlines must sit parents and children together. In fact, the actual rule says they should be in the same row. If that's not possible, then they need to be in the row behind or ahead. In practice, I've spoken to all the big airlines and they say, no, we would always sit parents with children. And if you are talking to British Airways, to EasyJet, to Jet2, they will do that at no charge. They will do it automatically. Of course, many parents, many families will pay. But if you think, no, I paid enough for my flight, I'm not going to do that, then you will be able to just pay the price you see, and then the airline will need to sort it out. Ryanair does things differently, as you imply, Andrew. They have long said, right, the parent, at least one parent, must pay for a seat. Once you've done that, and that can be pretty much anything up from about £8, you can then sit up to four children next to you at no extra cost. And frankly, if you had any more than four children on a flight, well, heaven forbid. But the Competition and Markets Authority says, hang on. The underlying rule is that you should be able to buy a flight at the price that is cited by the website. And so if you can see, for instance, a flight tomorrow from Edinburgh to Bournemouth for £15, which is quite a good deal, I'd say, you can buy that flight and you shouldn't have to pay anything extra as long as you're happy just to take a small piece of cabin baggage and you don't mind where you sit. But if you're a parent and a child, then the parent will need to spend an extra £8 on a specific seat, and that of course will increase the cost by more than 50%. The Competition Markets Authority says, we think this is possibly unfair. We are going to spend the next few months finding out whether that is the case. And if they do decide it's unfair, well, you could be in the position of tens of millions of families thinking, oh, we can get our money back. It could get very messy indeed.
But Simon, just to put Ryanair's case here for a moment, isn't it part and parcel of the budget airline industry that if you really are willing to fly with no extras whatsoever, you can fly at the price advertised on the website if you want no baggage, no food, no extras at all? It's up to them how they want to structure their pricing, and people who are regular flyers certainly will be well aware of the hidden costs.
Sure, yes, and that's actually, Miriam, you've hit absolutely upon it. It's the hidden costs. It's if you see a £15 flight, which is quite a bargain, then you should be able to buy it at £15. You can't if you are a parent, if I can tell you what Ryanair has said, they've really come out fighting this morning. They say this bogus CMA investigation is a failed effort by the Starmer government to pretend it cares about the consumer. It adds, Ryanair's family seating policy fully complies with all relevant laws and regulations and saves families money when travelling on the UK's lowest fare airline. And they add, Ryanair looks forward to disproving these false CMA claims during this bogus investigation. So personally, I'm going to be buying tickets for the meeting they have where they put their two sides to it. But look, I mean, the fundamental is that there are millions of families flying off on Ryanair and other airlines this summer. It won't make the blind bit of difference this summer to what people do. And I think, yeah, overall, we need to be grateful in the UK that we have absolutely the world's most competitive aviation industry, and everyone is a beneficiary of that. We've got more choice, lower fares than anyone else in Europe and probably anyone else around the world.
That is very interesting, Simon Calder. Every cloud has a Ryanair plane going through it.
Exactly. That's the Travel Journey at the Telegraph, Simon Calder, and that is going to be a very interesting investigation and a typical response from Ryanair, unrepentant. Coming up, a failure to ban smacking in England and Northern Ireland has been banned, a huge missed opportunity and deeply disappointing. We'll tell you why. This is Britain's Newsroom.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A damp and overcast day for much of the UK. Weather fronts moved in overnight. It does look a little bit drier into tomorrow and even drier into the weekend. But for now, we've got a wet start out there for many of us, and the rain will persist through much of the day, bringing with it a lot of cloud too. So very little way in the way of sunshine to come. It will feel quite humid out there too, as we've got southerly winds. We're in what's known as the warm sector through much of today. So temperatures will be in the mid to high teens, but it will feel quite humid. I think you will notice a difference stepping out there. It will last through the night as well into Friday. Much of the rain does push away to the east throughout this evening, but it's still going to be quite a damp evening for much of Scotland, particularly across more western areas. Quite a lot of cloud around, a bit of a grey end to the day. A bit more in the way of showery rain across parts of Northern Ireland, so it could be a little bit brighter than it has been through much of the day into this evening. A similar story for southwestern areas of the UK. Into the southeast, where we're just closer to that rain, we're more likely to see a bit of a damp end to the day. But the bulk of the rain does push away to the east through much of the night, and in its place we just see some showery rain moving through, so more widely a drier night to come for many of us, but quite a lot of cloud around, and we hold on to that humid feel throughout much of the night. So temperatures not really falling away much overnight, still in the mid-teens for many of us to start the day. Quite close feeling overnight. Here's a weather front pushing into parts of the Republic of Ireland and then into Northern Ireland, pushing into Wales and central areas through lunchtime and into the afternoon, just bringing thicker cloud for a time and a risk of some rain. Showers will affect the far northwest. Elsewhere, probably is going to feel fairly dry. Very limited sunshine, however, but temperatures still climbing a little bit higher to the low 20s in the southeast. Have a good day.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Are you dreaming of a ton of tax-free cash this summer? We want to make that dream come true with a stunning £76,543 and 21 pence in cash to spend however you like. Put a new car on the drive or just relax in the knowledge that this year we've got your back. For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me. What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things up the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel. As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
The Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, late edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
It's 11 a.m. on Thursday, 11th of June, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, fiery clashes have erupted between anti-immigration protesters and riot police in a second night of disorder.
Demonstrators were met with water cannons, plastic bullets as they attempted to march towards a Belfast hotel for asylum seekers.
Well, this comes as it's revealed that the Sudanese man accused of attempted murder was let in through the asylum fast-track scheme.
Yes, in 2023, when the suspect was granted leave to remain in the UK, 96% of Sudanese immigrants were granted asylum over in the UK. That poses huge problems for the Conservatives as well as Labour. Find out more with me very soon.
And GB News has been given exclusive access to the fight against London's phone theft epidemic. Metropolitan Police Chief Samart Rodi is calling on the mobile phone companies to turn those phones off, as Apple say they will, so they can become worthless bricks.
This business model that these criminals are running depends on the fact that your stolen phone, even though it's locked, can be reactivated because of the security flaws within it. We've been putting pressure on the tech companies. Really pleased Apple have made some progress on their technology, which looks like it's having an effect on their phones.
Elsewhere, a failure to ban smacking in England and Northern Ireland has been caused a huge missed opportunity and deeply disappointing. Well, that's as the punishment is being linked to future behavioural problems.
And Ryanair, who else, is under investigation by the UK's competition watchdog after charging parents to sit next to their children on air.
Andrew, I'm quite pleased that this smacking ban has not gone anywhere. It's fallen in Parliament because, of course, parents should not use excessive force against their children. It's already illegal to do that. You can't leave a mark, for example, or use implements. But, you know, a tap on the bottom for a toddler that's trying to run across the road. I mean, this is just part and parcel of life, isn't it?
It really is. And how do you police it? How do you enforce it? It's absurd. And also, it's the state coming into our front rooms again. again.
Yeah, that's right. And it would see all sorts of good parents criminalised, whilst not tackling the huge amount of child abuse that sadly does go on in this country and is either undetected or uninvestigated.
Could they sort out the grooming gangs rather than worrying about parents who may choose to give their child a smack on the legs? Didn't do me any harm.
No, absolutely. And also, yes, how do you research this? Because most people, certainly over the age of 40, will have been smacked as children. So how can you prove whether or not it's had any long-term impact? Although the Scots and the Welsh do have smacking bans.
They do. And has anyone been prosecuted? Has it been? How is it enforced? Big question.
They also have terribly performing education systems. I wonder if the two things are linked.
Of course, of course. As ever, tell us what you think. Send your views. Post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom. Just gone 3 minutes past 11. The top story. 12 police officers have been injured and 16 arrests made after a second night of unrest in Northern Ireland. That follows Monday's knife attack in Belfast. Police used water cannon against rioters on the outskirts of the north of the city in response to that second evening of riots. The main flashpoint was in Glengormley, where men dressed all in black and wearing face coverings targeted the police with projectiles. The family of victim Stephen Ogilvie say that they're disgusted by the disorder. The suspected attacker, Hadi Aladid, has appeared in court charged with attempted murder. Well, our national reporter Charlie Peters is in Belfast for us, where police have made arrests and extra officers have now been sent in after that next night of violence.
Protesters were pushed back by a water cannon after they approached police lines in riot gear, threw mortar and bricks and other objects, including bins set on fire, towards police officers. One derelict property on this road has been set on fire and gutted by flames. There's also a burned out car in the road. We're hearing this morning that 12 police officers have been injured and there have been 16 arrests after last night's disorder.
Northern Ireland Secretary Hilary Benn spoke to us this morning on GB News Breakfast, and he said that there was less disorder than last night, than the night before, rather, but condemned what he called racist thuggery.
The disorder we saw last night was at a lower level than the appalling violence and scenes we witnessed on Tuesday night. And I pay tribute to the courage of the PSNI, the emergency services, fire and ambulance, because they go towards the danger in order to protect people. And I also want to thank the many good people in Northern Ireland who've provided safety, shelter and support to people who've been affected by this, including those who have been intimidated by thugs out of their homes.
In other news this morning, nearly 3,000 patients a day were treated in hospital corridors or makeshift spaces in England last month, according to figures published for the first time. That data reveals the scale of so-called corridor care, where patients are treated in unsuitable areas rather than in a bed or a ward. That can include converted offices, chairs in hallways or other temporary treatment spaces. Ministers have described the practice as unsafe and unacceptable, but the NHS says publishing the figures today will help Trust tackle the issue. Britain's biggest police force is pushing the Home Secretary to force phone companies to make stolen devices harder to reuse. The Met Commissioner has said that stolen phones should become unusable bricks, so they're no longer valuable to criminals. The force has started sharing data with Apple to track whether stolen handsets are reconnected to networks after being taken. Sir Mark Rowley says that the phone thefts across the capital and robberies have also fallen, but handsets remain a major driver of street crime.
This business model that these criminals are running depends on the fact that your stolen phone, even though it's locked, can be reactivated because of the security flaws within it. We've been putting pressure on the tech companies. Really pleased Apple have made some progress on their technology, which looks like it's having an effect on their phones.
Britain's biggest budget airline is under investigation over claims it could be unfairly charging parents to sit next to their children. The competition watchdog is looking into whether Ryanair's fees, typically £8 for a one-way flight, are breaking consumer law. They're also examining whether the mandatory family seat fee is clearly displayed after some families claimed they weren't presented with the total price during the booking process. But Ryanair claims the CMA's investigation is bogus. The airline insists parents travelling with children only have to pay for one reserved seat and say additional children are free of charge. An update to that investigation is expected by the end of this year. The United States and Iran have launched yet more strikes across the Middle East for a second day now, raising fears that the fragile ceasefire is starting to break down. Washington says it hit military, surveillance and radar sites in southern Iran after Donald Trump warned Tehran it had taken too long to agree to a peace deal. Iran then fired back on American bases in Bahrain and Kuwait for a second day in a row and claimed to have targeted a US command centre in Jordan. And repeat offenders could be banned from railway stations for up to a year under a new scheme being rolled out across Britain. Train operators will be able to issue railway behaviour notices to people causing repeated antisocial behaviour. Breaching the notice could lead to arrest for trespass. The rail delivery group says trials showed a clear reduction in repeat offending when they were issued. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Now, though, it's back to Britain's newsroom.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Are they getting in touch or have we still not been able to get in?
Oh, they're all telling us how much they love listening to you, Andrew.
Because somebody said they could listen to Miriam all day.
He disagrees.
To which I responded, 2.5 hours, trust me, quite enough. I did say it with a heart emoji.
Oh, OK. We never know when you're serious, Andrew. Well, moving on now, our main story today, a second night of unrest erupted on the streets of Belfast after a Sudanese asylum seeker was charged with attempted murder following a knife attack on Monday evening.
There were water cannons used against demonstrators after masked protesters threw bricks and bottles at police. A dozen police officers were injured.
Well, this comes as it has been revealed that the suspect travelled to Northern Ireland from Dublin before having his asylum claim fast-tracked under a controversial Home Office scheme.
Let's talk to our GB News political correspondent, Olivia Utley. This is a problem, isn't it, in a sense, for the politicians, Olivia, because that common travel area, virtually, you can just go through any time you like. No restrictions. Has been there since 1922.
Well, absolutely. This is a huge problem for the government. We've all known for a long time that the small boat route from the Channel into Britain is a problem. But something which hasn't really been in the spotlight is this backdoor route, as it's now being called, this seeming asylum loophole, where migrants can fly from their country of origin into mainland Europe. In the suspect's case, it was Paris, then fly over into Dublin and simply get the bus into Belfast. Now, it might be a little bit harder without proper ID to get from Belfast into mainland Britain, but still, you've got a lot of asylum seekers lodged in Northern Ireland. Now, this is a massive issue. What does the government do about the common travel area? As you say, it's been there since 1922. It isn't something new. It isn't because of Brexit. It isn't part of the Windsor framework. But if there were to be a less porous border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, as the DUP is now calling for, perhaps unsurprisingly, that would open a huge can of worms.
It's a 310-mile-long border. How do you police it even if you wanted to?
Well, exactly. And people smugglers are now actually actively advertising the Ireland route as a way to get migrants into the UK. Some of the measures that this government and the previous government have taken to try and secure that French border are actually bearing fruit. We can see that lots of migrants are now choosing to go via Belgium rather than via France, which is obviously a less direct route, because some of those measures are helping to police the French borders. So instead, people smugglers are looking for other routes. And obviously, this route where you simply fly from mainland Europe into Dublin and then get the bus to Belfast is a very, very straightforward and safe way to go. And that's why you've got 2.5% of all asylum seekers in the UK are currently in Northern Ireland.
The border control is obviously one aspect of this, but another is the pull factor. So the reason that asylum seekers or illegal migrants are travelling from the Republic of Ireland to Northern Ireland is that it's part of the United Kingdom. We offer generous benefits to asylum seekers. We approve, I think it was 96% of Sudanese claims in that particular year. The pull factor is also a really, really important point in this case, isn't it? It's not just about the border, it's about the kind of benefits that can be enjoyed once people manage to cross it.
Well, exactly. exactly. And what happened in 2023 when the suspect was granted leave to remain in the United Kingdom, really astonishing, is that Rishi Sunak, when he was Prime Minister, made a fast-track programme to speed up the asylum process. He had a backlog of 90,000 migrants. So he had a fast-track programme for migrants from war-torn countries, among them Sudan, Yemen, Afghanistan. That increased the numbers of people travelling from those countries by 5 times, up to 50,000 in 2023.
So he made it even worse.
He made it even worse. And, of course, it meant that ordinary security checks were completely bypassed. Sudanese migrants in 2023 didn't have to go through an interview process at all. They simply had to fill out a questionnaire. So no wonder 96% of them were granted asylum. And, of course, this case is extraordinary, unusual, but it is a massive worry that this huge 50,000 migrants approved entry to the UK with very, very few checks, approved very, very quickly, and we don't know what's happened to most of them.
Where are they?
Still here somewhere in the UK, we suspect, and the safety checks just weren't properly done. So this is a huge issue and something that's going to be looked at very, very closely over the next few weeks and months. How many other people of unknown origin from Sudan, Yemen, Afghanistan are simply living in the UK now, having got here illegally but then being granted leave to remain?
I wonder if we should have actually paid more attention to the situation in Northern Ireland. It's not the complications of that soft border, if you like, have not been headline news here. But Carla Lockhart, DUP MP, over a year ago asked in the House of Commons if the Home Office had any records of the number of people crossing illegally that border. The Home Office said, no, we don't keep any records. You know, we've known, we should have known for some time that this is a very difficult situation.
Of course, no votes for the main political parties, Labour, Liberal, Tories, in Northern Ireland.
No, and I think well, exactly. And I think also part of the problem is that none of the parties in the UK want to talk about the Northern Ireland border because we saw the can of worms that it opened up sort of 5 or 6 years ago during the Windsor framework negotiations. Not that the Common Travel Area has anything to do with that, but I think for British politicians, the less that is known, the less that we talk about the Northern Ireland border, the better.
There is also a particular problem in Northern Ireland in that instead of housing asylum seekers in hotels, which is obviously an unpopular policy, but nevertheless it's a containment policy, we know that lots of asylum seekers have just been put in social housing, in streets, interspersed with other families, and that in itself has caused unrest in a way that perhaps it hasn't in this country.
Well, exactly, and I think the other problem in Northern Ireland, I actually go to Northern Ireland every year and I know it quite well, and you can actually see over sort of the last 10, 15 years, the migrant population to Northern Ireland is very, very new. In somewhere like London, we're used to huge amounts of migrants coming over here every single year. This problem is new to Northern Ireland, and I think that's why the unrest is hitting so hard.
Olivia Utley, thank you very much.
We're going to go now to Charlie Peters, our GBNews national reporter, who is in Northern Ireland. Charlie.
It's in your...
Oh dear, we seem to be having a little bit of a problem with the connection there. We'll try and return to Charlie as soon as possible. Olivia, of course, the other reason that the situation in Northern Ireland is unique is because of the history of the Troubles, of sectarianism, of violence, of organised riots. You know, anybody kind of my age or older will have grown up seeing all those on the television screen. Of course, these riots are about a different issue, but the history does feed into what's going on.
Well, exactly, and something our colleague Doogie Beattie likes to talk about is recreational riots in Northern Ireland. I think that sort of tinderbox is just a little bit sort of drier, a little bit more ready to explode in Northern Ireland than it is in the rest of the UK. You've got the, you know, remnants of some of those sectarian groups who have that kind of infrastructure of rioting in place and ready to go. Some of these areas of Belfast as well, particularly poor, particularly downtrodden areas where that frustration is perhaps more close to the surface than in other areas of the UK. So it is a huge problem, and it's one that is going to be very, very difficult for all of the major parties to tackle. I think it's worth noting that not only is this a problem, obviously, for the Labour government in power, we also know it's a problem for the Conservatives because so much of this was due to Rishi Sunak's immigration policy back in 2023. But actually, the person who was Home Secretary in 2023 was Suella Braverman, who is now the education spokesperson from Reform. The person who was Immigration Minister was Robert Jenrick, who's now Treasury spokesperson for Reform. So this affects all three of the major parties.
Yeah, and Suella Braverman's pushed back very hard, saying I was fighting from from within, I was fighting from within, but she brought this in.
Well, exactly, and that's what we went to. I went to a press conference yesterday where I asked that question to Zia Youssef and Richard Tice, and they both said, well, Suella Braverman was pushing hard from the inside. It was the wet Conservative Party that allowed this to happen. Suella Braverman was Home Secretary at the time.
Yes,
you think if she wasn't able to stop it, then who would have been?
And she did eventually resign over this.
And she did resign.
You could ask why not resign
Over
earlier on
this.
when it became clear that these policies were happening. It does speak to, though, an extraordinary naivety amongst politicians about asylum and immigration. There has been this assumption on both sides, I think, for some time, that all people fleeing war-torn or developing countries are victims, they're worthy of asylum. Now, of course, there's absolutely a case for that, but without a recognition that people from different cultures may behave differently, people from cultures where violence is more prevalent, where misogyny is more prevalent, we need to ask questions about why we want to introduce those cultures into British culture.
Yes, exactly. And obviously when unrest was beginning in Afghanistan a few years ago, when the Taliban was taking over, again, we opened the door to Afghan refugees, and you can sort of see the argument for that. But as you say, Miriam, it is a completely different culture, and misogyny is rife. And I think that is a huge issue, particularly for the Labour Party. There are still lots of backbenchers in the Labour Party, and of course this isn't the government's position, who like the idea of open borders, who see any tightening of border security as essentially a bad and non-liberal policy. So every single time Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood try to push back against this, try to tackle this, they are, to one extent or another, sort of thwarted by their own backbenchers.
And Hilary Benn was talking about this on GB News this morning, saying that Shabana Mahmood is doing X, Y, Z. And thought, and then 95% of the Labour Party oppose it.
Oppose it, exactly.
And we don't know yet whether she's going to get these measures through.
No, we don't know how long she's going to be the Home Secretary
All of that.
for. Exactly. So it's a really, really difficult position for Labour. But the Conservatives, again, aren't on particularly strong ground either with this one. That desperation to clear that 90,000 immigration backlog has landed them in some pretty hot water.
Made it even worse.
Olivia, thank you very much for your thoughts this morning. Well, coming up next, after a second night of disorder on the streets of Belfast, there's increasing pressure on the government to overhaul its asylum system.
We're going to that more with Nigel Nelson and Carol Malone, our panel. There they are. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At the stroke of midnight, the news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
Day in, day out. Forget stuffy late night TV shows. We're giving you a front row ticket to the centre of the political universe.
Because breaking news doesn't wait for the morning.
And neither do we. Join us for one of the most controversial and volatile times of politics in human history.
A very big story.
Big story over here.
You won't get this anywhere else. The Late Show live at midnight, every night.
Only on GB News.
Britain's Newsroom live across the UK with Andrew Meehan. We've got Carol and Nigel are back with us. Malone, tell us. This the latest trans thing, which is eye-popping.
It is just unbelievable. The National Police Chiefs Council have said...
Oh, that lot.
That lot have said it's perfectly fine that if a trans woman, i.e. a man, wants to be strip searched, requests a strip search by a female officer, he can have that. So... So
he's got all his bits.
So he's got all his bits, and it means that he can be strip searched by... Now, female officers can, this is their guidance, this Police Chiefs Council guidance says, female officers can refuse, but of course they're terrified that if they do, they're going to be seen as transphobic. Now, an organisation called Sex Matters and Women's Rights Network have applied to the High Court for this guidance from this council to be overturned, saying that, and this is their words, not mine, they say it much better than I can. They say it harms male detainees who have an erotic interest in cross-dressing to get a sexual thrill from exposing themselves in front of women, or simply to just enjoy humiliating them. And that's exactly what may happen. But it just shows you that this guidance that we just had recently about biological sex means
from the Supreme
sex
Court,
and birth.
no less.
From the Supreme Court. And it was qualified recently under new guidance. Organisations like the cops and like the NHS, they're just ignoring it. They're just doing what they want. And there seems to be no comeback for it.
This is the shower that came up with the brilliant advice, isn't it, Nigel, about treat ethnic minorities differently.
It is the same, yeah,
That's
it's the
why I
same
said,
people.
oh, it's them again.
Yeah, it is the same people.
Yes. Called the
National Police Chiefs Council.
What a shower.
However, in a situation like this, all it is actually showing some respect. So what they would do in these circumstances, they'd try and find a trans officer to go and do the search.
You're joking?
No, I'm not joking.
How many of them
in the
are
first instance, they would look for...
Hang on.
They'd look
So
for
what if the trans officer is actually a male and the trans suspect...
No, I mean, it would be of the same, as they put it, the same lived-in gender.
You ring up, where's the nearest... Oh, Glasgow. Can you come down from Glasgow?
Is there a helpline?
I mean, how utterly ridiculous.
Well, that's what they would do anyway.
So we have
that's the
figures
idea.
for how many trans officers are actually in the force.
Yeah, I know. I'm just explaining...
to reveal their status.
Well, exactly.
I didn't draw up this guidance. I'm just explaining it. That's what they would do. So it would just be a matter of respect. So if...
What about respect for the female officer who would have to strip search?
But the female officer can refuse.
Yes, but like I just said.
I know. Well, that's what Sex Matters says, that they would then...
They would be.
Organisation.
They would be accused of being transphobic. Yes. But if they stick to their guns and say, look, well, I'm not going to do it, then
They'll
don't
still
do
be
it.
accused of being transphobic. That's the whole point. It doesn't matter whether
Well, you don't know they would be accused of being transphobic. They could actually turn around and say no.
When you have organisations like this one dictating the rules, they will regard you as transphobic if you refuse. It's the fact that they're imposing
young
these
officer,
rules.
you want to go up the greasy ladder, Nigel, aren't you to think, I'm going to have to do this?
The Telegraph are actually reporting that trans women have the right to request a strip search by a female officer. They're not reporting that it's by a trans officer.
No, but if you read further down...
Oh, OK.
But even so, it doesn't matter. You know, to get, as Miriam says, where's the nearest trans officer? London? Glasgow? France? But it's just ridiculous.
Sorry, that was a bit of a side lad. I was just pointing it out.
So, I know, but it does point to the utter madness of the whole thing.
But the whole thing is that if a female police officer is perfectly happy to do it, and Well, hang on. There may be some. If it was a female or male doctor, they wouldn't balk at something like this.
So a big old criminal comes in and it says I'm a woman, and the female officer would be perfectly happy to get down and dirty with him to do the strip search.
Well, they may...
It's a red course. She's not going to be happy.
But the whole thing is, if they are, they've changed their gender, that they've done it under the Gender Recognition Act,
which doesn't matter.
Well, it does, because I mean, then they will have female on their passport, female on their birth certificate.
But they've got
on that basis.
But Nigel makes an important point. We have a law, the Gender Recognition Act, which has absolutely no basis in fact or biology, and yet it is the law. Unless we repeal the Gender Recognition Act, we're going to
isn't that what is going to have to happen?
Well, I totally agree. We should absolutely repeal gender recognition.
But we have another law.
Be the only way
but the
to
Supreme Court,
organisations like the National Police Council.
Yeah, but the Supreme Court said it didn't need to be repealed.
No.
When they came up with their judgment,
organisations like the police and NHS would heed their advice.
No,
they're not.
But the police are. It's not, the police aren't breaking the law. What the Supreme Court said was that biological sex has to be taken into account for equality issues. That's fine. I agree with that. That a trans woman is a biological man. Got that. Why can't they be treated with some respect, though?
It's not respect. There's nothing to do with respect. A woman should not have to strip search a man if she doesn't want to. That's just a basic tenet of dignity, of British culture, of Western culture, that generations...
But officially, she is a woman.
But officially, no.
Yeah, but she's...
Officially, she is a woman.
Biologically, which is the...
Biologically, she's not.
She's not. It's a man.
Well,
and you're absolutely right to
that's an opinion.
of the law.
That's your opinion.
No. It's a fact that he is a man. It's an opinion that the law makes.
It's a fact he's a biological man. It is also a fact that if you transition,
Nigel, look at this.
You are officially a woman.
The Supreme Court has ruled, and we are still in total...
Yes, that's a good point.
Total chaos.
In addition,
it took Bridget Phillips and the Equality Secretary a year to publish anything after the Supreme Court.
But I do think you're right to draw attention to the law.
Completely enthralled they are. All our major institutions, the NHS particularly, and the cops, to this ridiculous this ridiculous trans ideology, which tries to, subvert...
But do you not think that say somebody has lived as a woman for, say, 30 years and is taken in, that they have to be strip searched by a male police officer? Is that the alternative?
How would you like it?
A bloke should strip search a bloke, and a woman should strip search
there
a
is
woman.
there are only two types of human being, male and female.
Biologically. I agree with you.
It's an incredibly important distinction. Anything else, skin colour, hair colour, race, those things are irrelevant. They are tiny, tiny genetic differences, whereas whether you're male or female is absolutely determinant.
You're right, biologically.
That's the truth.
But you can change your gender.
There's no such thing as gender. The thing is, Nigel, even in the law...
It's not a caveat. It's what the Supreme Court rules.
It's just your opinion.
A man and a woman.
Even in the law, there is no definition of gender. You're right to draw attention to the Gender Recognition Act, which has confused everything, absolutely, and we have to repeal it. But, as Carol said, anybody with sense in the police...
Which is not the police
body. And why are they spending time on this?
These are the most senior police chiefs in the country.
Would you let your lovely wife be strip searched by a trans woman officer?
That would be entirely her choice. I would not interfere.
Do you think she'd like that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no idea.
Yes, you do. Absolutely.
It is not something I've actually asked her, but when I go home, I will do so.
If you're watching, send us in a message.
Exactly.
Keep reading on you to send us in a message. Have we got time to talk about that one other story?
Yes, what was it? I forgot. Oh, it was about... Yes, this is about...
the England flag.
The England flag. So immigration officers are being told they must not wear badges that display the England flag in case it upsets illegal migrants.
Why would they come to England?
To the country. Apparently it intimidates and upsets them, apparently. So they've been told that they mustn't do it because it's aggressive and they mustn't wear them. So people who shouldn't be here, who are being held in a detention centre away from everyone else, who have no legal right to be in this country, we are accommodating their fear of the English flag and stopping people who are...
they care. It's the blooming HR officers,
Yeah, of course it is.
But so during the World Cup, all those immigration officers who want to support England, they can't do it.
This has got nothing to do with the World Cup. This happened last summer.
Doesn't matter.
Well, hang on.
No, they've come to this country illegally because they see us as the land of milk and honey, and yet apparently a little badge on the immigration officer's suit will intimidate them.
OK, all right.
Clear off then.
All right, well, there were only 2 cases, so it's not a widespread problem.
Well, 2 is too many.
But if you're wearing a political badge, and the problem about the England flag is it's become political.
Not in my eyes.
So what they shouldn't wear a Palestinian flag either. They shouldn't have any
political...
political...
That's not their flag, Nigel. The Palestinian flag is not their national flag. The English flag is their flag.
But the English flag has been politicised.
No, it hasn't. By people like on the left. People like you have politicised it.
No, hardly. The England flag is flown outside protests outside
these 2 conversations. I can hardly believe this is United Kingdom. What has become of this country?
Well, hang on. You pretend
madness.
To say that the England flag has not been politicised must be nonsense.
To say that illegal migrants are going to be deeply offended by an immigration with a tiny little England badge on his shirt, tough luck if they're offended. Tough. Why did they come here in the first place?
But if you're making a political point,
they're not. They want to support England and the World Cup.
No, they don't. That's what they don't do. It was last summer, before the World Cup.
A political assumption to the British flag. It's only the left that does that. Most sensible people just see it as St George's
protests outside migrant hotels. You saw an awful lot of England flags.
Yeah.
If you see a demonstration where Tommy Robinson is speaking, you see a lot of England flags.
You cannot defend this.
You've lost everyone out there. They've all turned off.
And it is absurd.
He knows his job, and he does it well.
But you do it very well, and that's great. Carolyn, I was about to say Carolyn Nino.
Carolyn Nino.
Carolyn Nigel, thanks for coming. We are going to be going to a press conference in Northern Ireland very shortly. But also we're going to be talking about the famous band smacking.
Yeah, although
Northern Ireland.
I don't think it's just children who should be smacked sometimes. But anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been described as a huge missed opportunity, and it's deeply disappointing. We are watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a soggy one so far today. The rain will ease in some places through the afternoon, but overall staying pretty damp and staying pretty breezy. Lots of lines on the weather chart, never a good sign. A combination of weather fronts and isobars, and these weather fronts have been providing the rain. They're still largely dry across the far northeast, but even here the rain creeping in across Aberdeenshire, Caithness and Sutherland. Outbreaks of rain further south on the heavy side in places, but parts of Wales, southwest England and Northern Ireland seeing some lengthier, drier spells this afternoon. It is quite breezy, temperature-wise around or below average for the time of year, but actually probably feeling quite humid in a few places, particularly if we do see any brighter skies. Now, the rain will continue to track its way away from the east as we go into the evening, so things turning a little bit drier, staying largely dry and fine in Shetland. Much of Scotland, though, keeping a lot of cloud with outbreaks of rain and drizzle, particularly over hills. A few showers into Northern Ireland, but also some drier interludes here. Things turning drier down the eastern side of England as we go through the evening time, as the rain slowly clears away from East Anglia and Kent, and something a bit drier too for Wales and southwest England to end the day. But staying quite breezy, staying quite blustery, and the breezes will continue to feed in more cloud and some showery rain over western hills through the night. Many central and eastern parts should become largely dry overnight with some clearer skies. Temperatures mostly holding up in the teens, so quite a warm and humid night, particularly so in the south. On to Friday, it's a messy old mix, certainly to start with, mostly cloudy, but we should see some sunny spells over northeast England, some outbreaks of rain in the west, but not as wet as today. The rain largely confined to hills and not too heavy, certainly through the afternoon. We should see brighter skies for many with some sunny spells coming through, and it will be warmer, particularly across eastern England, with temperatures getting back into the 20s.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
Because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 11:36. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, plans to ban smacking in children in Northern Ireland, which would follow Scotland and Wales, have been dropped.
Well, this comes as new research links physical punishment to worse behaviour and exam results later in life.
So it's illegal in Scotland and Wales and the Republic of Ireland. So we're asking, should England and Northern Ireland follow suit? Because that would, of course, criminalise parents who have the temerity to smack their kids.
Well, joining us now is Dr Ashley Frawley. Dr Frawley, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about this research. What evidence is there that smacking children leads to harm later on in life?
So there has been a lot of advocacy research, particularly backed by the NSPCC, that is just endlessly trying to draw causal relationships between what is effectively had been for many, many years a quite normal interaction between parents, light smacks for the purposes of discipline, which is the only thing that is actually legal, to a wide range of outcomes. And the fact of the matter is that you simply can't do that. It's very, very difficult. Like, you can be most sure of things in like physics and biology, but once you start getting into social sciences, it's really, really difficult to draw causal relationships because life is really, really complex. And it's hard to say that one infrequent smack causes something, 10 years later. It's very, very difficult to do that. And in fact, you can draw a lot of correlations, but it's difficult to disentangle correlation from the type of family that might use smacking might also be the type of family that does other things and so on. So it's simply impossible. And that's the sort of consensus, I think, among people who've really thought about this seriously, that you can't really draw a causal relationship between something like an infrequent smack as a child to something 10 years down the line. Nonetheless, there's an unending attempt to pour a bunch of money and resources into doing so. But this is advocacy research done for the purpose of trying to outlaw smacking in various different countries.
Now, Dr Frawley, a lot of people would be concerned about a legal ban, that it would criminalise the wrong people. How would you bring a case against a parent, for example, who tapped their toddler on the bottom when the toddler had tried to cross the road or touch the fire?
Yeah, I mean, what they often say is like, oh, we're not trying to criminalise parents, we're just trying to send a message. But what they're actually saying when they say that is, we're promising an arbitrary enforcement of the law. So sometimes you might get arrested, sometimes you might not. And it was very interesting because some years ago, when I was involved in this debate around smacking in Wales, when I was at Swansea University, I was on BBC Radio, and immediately after my interview, I stayed on the line, and a police officer was called in, and he said, I'm just really concerned about the guidance here. Would I be required to criminalize even a professional? That's what he said, even a professional. So he was actually saying, normally I would discriminate against the working class. But would I also have to arrest professionals?
Goodness.
So you know that who's going to get the benefit of the doubt? And we know that working class people and people who are down the kind of social line, down the social ladder, are under much more surveillance. Yeah. Their children are much more likely to be taken away from them, often for good reason, I should say. And we should be able to focus on those families that are having really, really serious problems and try to find abuse and so on. Like, finding abuse is like serious abuse. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. And you're just adding so many more needles. And the evidence is coming out now in places where, in Wales, for instance, that yes, there has been a stretch on services. Yes, hundreds of parents are going through these processes, and they are trying to sort of divert them. but it still means that you have to admit to wrongdoing in order to go through these diversion processes, and that winds up on your on an enhanced background check, for example. So it causes extraordinary problems for people. Like, I'm not saying that this is the best way to raise children, but I don't think it's a good idea to have the police knocking at your door saying, "Excuse me, miss, I don't think you are using the best methods to raise your children." It's not a matter for the police.
And also, Dr. Frawley, what about the child, the impish child, age 9, who says to the teacher, "My mummy smacked me," and then the teacher says, "Well, that won't do," and bring the authorities in, and they've made it up?
Yeah, unfortunately, this has happened, and even in cases where the child regrets it, you've now put your family through this extraordinary legal process. Jobs are lost even when there's no conviction, because if you've been accused of assaulting a child and you work with children, you can't work with those children anymore. And also, families get broken up because again, if you've been accused of assaulting your child, you're not left with the family, even if you're not ultimately convicted. So there are all kinds of repercussions that come even where a conviction isn't found, even if that's not the end point. So if you want to send a message, go ahead, let's have a conversation about how to discipline children. You don't use the criminal law to do so, because by doing so, you bring in a whole host of other issues.
Is that completely mad, isn't it?
Well, Dr. Frawley, a voice of common sense, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Yeah, really important. We've got a statement here from the NSPCC, which Miriam would love to read.
Decades of research have shown that physical punishment can impact a child's physical, mental and emotional health. We know that physical punishment doesn't improve children's behaviour, it can actually make behavioural problems worse. My children are too big to smack, sadly.
Yeah, they smack you back. They might smack you back. Doesn't one of yours a 6-footer?
Yeah, I don't try and smack him.
No.
It would be most counterproductive.
Up next, we're going to be going live to Belfast, where police are going to give an update on the second night of disorder. But first, we're going to get that forecast of some European sunshine.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. High pressures building in for much of Europe to bring plenty of sunshine. It's especially warm through the Canary Islands through the rest of this week. Temperatures climbing towards the high 20s across Tenerife. Also quite warm in Portugal as well as Italy. Temperatures climb into the low 30s here. There's a risk of thunderstorms across Greece, particularly in the afternoons, and that risk does continue into the weekend. But otherwise, it looks pretty warm and pretty sunny if you're heading away. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
It's like tricking people into thinking it's something greater than it is, but really it's a hot dog bun with icing on. And when you're going to a shop and you've got an ice bun and right next to it you've got this beautiful plump glazed donut, which one are you going to pick? You're going to be treat-wise and you're going to pick the one that's not a hot dog covered with icing.
Fair point.
I haven't had a nice bun for years.
So what kind of cakes are people buying instead?
There we are, you see, that's right. What's the most popular cake now?
I would say in terms of treats, people are liking really chunky cookies, and because that's got a hit of nostalgia as well, because I know ice bun is so steeped in nostalgia.
GB News, the People's Channel. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is England's first ever cycle street. But what is a cycle street, I hear you ask? Well, take a look. It's basically a cycle lane on steroids. The whole road is a cycle lane. So let's see what it's like. It's designed to be safer for cyclists. Cyclists have priority over cars. Cars still can use the road, but look, it's a cycle street. The council say it's safer for cyclists. Cars have to go more slowly. There's also fewer parking spots for cars so that they can't open their doors in the cyclist's face, and there's fewer blind spots as well. They've also made the pavements wider in order for pedestrians to have easier access walking on this street. But all of this came at a cost of £2 million and took 7 months to build.
GB News, the People's Channel. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Scandal isn't exactly the word, but of course we are in a time of, as you know, very considerable sensitivity when it comes to royal finances and any money spent on the royal family.
So, I mean, should this money be going back to the taxpayer? Is that the real problem here?
I think that the argument is that the taxpayer could have got a better bargain from what was negotiated at the beginning and when this began. I mean, this is not an dissimilar arrangement to that, for example, with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor when it came to the main house. But as I say, subletting is something that apparently they're doing. The way the Public Accounts Committee in the House of Commons will be looking into the way the Crown Estate handles royal properties.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. It's just about 11:45. We're just awaiting a press conference in Northern Ireland where the police are due to speak, presumably about the disorder that's been going on and, of course, the horrendous case on Monday night of that attempted murder.
Sure, and they're going to be appealing for calm ahead of the weekend. And, of course, Northern Ireland has a particularly sad history. Nigel Nelson's still with us, of street disorder and demonstrations. Nigel, they've been they know how to organise.
Yeah, I mean...
Because of the province's unique history.
Yes, because of 30 years of civil war there. I mean, we called it the Troubles, but it was actually a cuddly term for what was a horrible civil war.
Thousands of people killed.
Yeah.
British troops on
the question, obviously, is, and it'll become more apparent, who is taking part in this. I mean, what the police in Northern Ireland say is that they think it's criminal elements who are radicalising young men.
They would say that, they wouldn't they?
Yes, they would, but I mean, it's in answer to the question about does it have anything to do with what happened in Northern Ireland previously. So aside from the fact they're used to this kind of violence, well, they haven't been for some years, bear in mind. I mean, we're going back...
Well, there were some riots in Ballymena, also immigration-related.
There have been immigration riots and so on, but there's been much less kind of paramilitary activity since the Good Friday Agreement. It hasn't ended. There are still an awful lot of supporters of both sides out there, and probably the only reason we haven't seen a bomb on the mainland here is because there aren't enough of them and they can't organise themselves so well. But this seems to be materially different in the way that the violence is targeted, and it does seem to be particularly racist in the sense that they are going for people of a different colour. And obviously an undercurrent there, which we talked about earlier, about people being fed up with about a lot of things. It's not just the race issue, but that's the one that's come to the fore.
Olivia Utley, our political correspondent, was saying earlier that although of course, immigration is a long-standing issue across the United Kingdom. It's a much more recent issue in Northern Ireland. They haven't had so much immigration, and it's been compounded by the fact that the Northern Ireland administration has housed asylum seekers in the community in a way that hasn't happened in the UK because we have many more hotels, we have military barracks, which of course they don't. A lot of those have been decommissioned after the Troubles. So it's become very obvious very quickly that things have changed, and that has obviously led to unrest. Yeah, and also bear in mind that is now the policy here, because 35% of the migrant hotels in Britain have now been closed down. So they've been moving migrants either into former army barracks or into houses next to other people. I mean, they've got to go somewhere, and
they could go back.
Well, go back where? Let's take Sudan as an example.
Well,
just pluck it out of the air.
I'm saying I think, Nigel, a lot of these people who came here were economic migrants who refused to say where they came from because they weren't from countries which were war-torn or where there was strife, where they were avoiding strife. They came here because they were economic migrants.
But how do you then get? Where do you send them back to?
They broke the law. Just deport them.
Yeah, I know this is the argument. Just deport them. Deport them where? You've got to get the agreement of the country you're deporting them to.
This is why the Rwanda policy was the right one, because you're right. There are countries where we can't deport people back to, so you need a third country. Now, lots of people had objections to Rwanda, including the Supreme Court, but nevertheless, it has been proven now, 2 years after nearly the election, where, of course, the Rwanda bill fell. That is what we need, and it's not our problem.
Who's proved it?
Well, the fact that we still have not solved the boat crisis.
That's not
the
proof.
fact that nearly all of the people who've been deported have been voluntary and backed to countries that we do have agreements with, and the fact now that in Northern Ireland it's become very, very clear the Home Office has no idea how many people are crossing.
But none of that is proof that Rwanda would have been a deterrent.
Well, tell me how we saw. You asked the question, where do we send these people back to?
Yeah, that's right.
You're right that there are countries that we cannot legally deport people to. The only option is a third country. Doesn't have to be Rwanda, but it was the only one on the table. How do we solve this without a third country for processing?
I think you do need a third country, and processing is absolutely right. That at the moment people can only claim asylum if they're on British soil or at a British border. That is a draw to make them across the channel. If we can process them somewhere else, that would stop them wanting to cross the channel. So that's the deterrent in a way that Rwanda never was.
But that only works if you also know that if you do manage to cross the channel or walk across the border in Ireland, that you will be sent back immediately.
That's right. Well, what you then do is you go back to the Tory illegal migration bill, and what you do there is make them inadmissible. So if they come here, they cannot stay.
Yeah.
The problem with that, which is what the Tories found, was all you did then was increase the backlog, because they couldn't stay, but they couldn't go either. So you just left them here.
Which leads us back to Rwanda.
Well, and Rwanda wouldn't have worked. Well, we don't know if it would work as a deterrent, and that was the idea. It was meant to be a deterrent. We have no idea if it worked if it would have worked.
People were leaving Northern Ireland to go to the south because they thought they might be deported to Rwanda.
Yeah, look, there's very scant evidence for that. The point was that the Permanent Secretary at the Home Office wouldn't sign off the Rwanda bill as value for money because there was no proof that it would have a deterrent value. It was going to cost a total of 10 billion. We spent 700 million on nothing. 4 volunteers actually went there. And if it had continued, we'd have a few hundred migrants going there. So it was never a really realistic proposition.
And it had been a deterrent, it would have stopped the problem. And that would save the country.
Well, but we don't know.
A year on.
But there was never any. This is we go back in a sort of circle to what Miriam was saying. There's no evidence it would ever be a deterrent.
Well, OK, so, for example, it's worked in Australia. Look at what Hungary do.
Australia's different.
Hungary, to claim asylum in Hungary, you have to go to a Hungarian embassy outside of Hungary, and if you do manage to cross their border, you get pushed back straight into Serbia. They've changed their law to allow that. Guess what? They had something like, from memory, 20 asylum claims down from over 100,000.
And what this government's been doing is trying to find somewhere for offshore processing. So so we tried Albania, for instance. Look what happened there. The Albanians said, no, we don't want it, because one of the problems will be, do you want 40,000 people crossing your country?
But here we go back to Rwanda again, because they had agreed to it.
Yeah, but it wasn't processing.
It was to start with. So people
it wasn't. It was deportation. Once you got there, you stayed there.
There was, yes. No, once you got there and you've been processed, you would have had had your asylum claim failed, you would have been returned to your country of origin. If we didn't have an agreement with that country, they would have stayed in Rwanda.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have come back here.
No, absolutely, and that's part of
that's what I mean. It wasn't a processing thing.
But I think that's quite reasonable to say. If you break into a country, you will not have the chance.
Well, they haven't broken into it for a start, because they will never get prosecuted for not having a passport. That while it's technically illegal...
it's not technically, it's illegal.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
It's not illegal to rock up on the shores of Kent and wander down the high street.
No, it's not actually. The way that works is that it is illegal to come into this country without proper documentation,
which is what they
for which you could get 4 years. Right. The exception is if you claim asylum the moment you get here, and that's why they're never prosecuted.
It's chaos. It's chaos. That's the end of our programme, and the press conference will be coming up. That will be in the capable hands of
Tom and Emily on Good Afternoon Britain. So we'll hand over to them now. We'll see you tomorrow morning. That's it from Britain's Newsroom. But we haven't forgotten about the press conference. Do hang in for that.
That's right. Coming up on Good Afternoon Britain, we'll be live in Belfast for that important police press conference on the disorder and wider situation there in Northern Ireland.
Absolutely, and we're going to look at the immigration situation. How did the suspect in this hideous case manage to get to Northern Ireland. We'll reveal all, and also what's going on TikTok with some people smugglers advertising Ireland as a guaranteed entry into England. We'll reveal all next on Good Afternoon Britain.
£76,543 and 21 pence in tax-free cash could be yours this summer. That's totally tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. And remember, because it's totally tax-free cash, you'll get to keep every single penny. For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howard. This is the show where each week we see what's happening in the world of culture, current affairs and politics.
First we'll say, welcome to the UK.
And we're not afraid to use our free speech so that you can use yours.
It's not controversial in the slightest to anyone who hasn't lost their mind.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB Newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I think GB News is completely unique in the way that we interact with our viewers.
Our audience aren't afraid to have their say. They want their voices heard now, and they've got a channel where that can happen.
I find more and more as I'm wandering around, people come up to me and they say, we saw you on television. I say, oh yes, on what? On GB News.
Hello, are you the famous Sue? The whole crew hit me here now. We came to celebrate.
It's our job to be the eyes and ears of the viewers.
They are part of the GB News family, and I'm pleased to say it's a very large family.
And if people go to the time and trouble of listening and watching, then we've got to do a good job for them.
Well, I'm here, right in the epicentre of the protest.
Here we go again. You just tuned in. Where have you been?
It is raucous here tonight.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Thursday, the 11th of June. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver. Well, fiery clashes erupted between anti-immigration protesters and the riot police in a second night of disorder in Belfast.
Well, demonstrators were met with water cannon and plastic bullets as they attempted to march towards a Belfast asylum hotel.
It comes as it's revealed the Sudanese man accused of attempted murder may have been let in through the asylum fast-track scheme.
This comes as The Telegraph is reporting people smuggling gangs are offering illegal immigrants guaranteed passage to Britain via flights to Dublin. These posts on social media show gangs advertising a backdoor route into Britain.
Elsewhere, GBNews has been granted exclusive access to the fight against London's phone theft epidemic. Met Police Chief Sir Mark Rowley is calling on the government to turn stolen phones into worthless bricks.
This business model that these criminals are running depends on the fact that your stolen phone, even though it's locked, can be reactivated because of the security flaws within it. We've been putting pressure on the tech companies. Really pleased Apple have made some progress on their technology, which looks like it's having an effect on their phones.
Where will your child fail their GCSEs if you smack them? Well, a new report claims smacking children as a form of punishment is correlated with lower school grades and bad behaviour in their teenage years.
And Ryanair is under investigation by the UK's competition watchdog after they charged parents who wanted to sit next to their children. Is that right?
And the World Cup officially kicks off today. But is it an own goal for pub goers after it's revealed that the price of a pint has risen by almost 40% since the last tournament?
Blimey. %?
Yeah, no, I think that does show that beer inflation, or at least pub pint inflation, is more significant than just about any other indexed item. But that's not just because of wider inflation, that's because of specific policies that have affected our pubs, whether that's the national insurance increase, the minimum wage increase, the energy price hikes that we've seen, all of these things that have been absolutely hammering the hospitality industry.
Well, there have been a lot of calls for pubs to sell us half-price pints because it's the World Cup, but actually it'd probably be better business for them to actually hike the price because demand's going to be so much higher. But that would be immoral.
Would it? Yes, probably would. Well, but of course we're also talking today about the crazy asylum system we seem to have had. Now, we're not entirely sure. It does seem likely that the suspect in the Belfast stabbing case came through on a fast-track scheme. But it does seem absolutely extraordinary that in recent years a scheme was set up that could have meant no interview was required for people coming from the most war-torn and dangerous parts of the world.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. So the claim is that this suspect may well have had just a 10-page questionnaire from the Home Office to fill in, no face-to-face interview, don't believe any kind of phone call even, and then to grant them asylum, refugee status to live in this beautiful, wonderful country.
It's astonishing. I've got friends who are trying to come to this country in good professional jobs from first world countries, and they are having a torrid time of it. And meanwhile, if you come from one of the most dangerous places in the world, surrounded by temperamental violence, you can come in without even an interview. It's astonishing.
Well, you know, there's currently a visa pause on Sudan, but that's a visa pause. If you did make it to this country
as a refugee,
you'll be able to. So if you do come illegally and then claim asylum, well, you're in the system, aren't you?
I think it's just. I think the visa pause for Sudan only applies to international students.
No, I think it's a full-on visa ban because it's been abused so much on the workers' visas as well. But we'll look into that for you because it's very interesting. gbnews.com/yoursay. Please do get in touch. Is our asylum system just a joke at this stage? But it's your headlines with Sam.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much and good afternoon to you. Just after midday, the top story this hour. 12 police officers have been injured, 16 people also arrested. That's after a second night of unrest in Northern Ireland, following Monday's knife attack in Belfast. Police used water cannon against what the Police Federation of Northern Ireland have now called violent fascist lawbreakers on the outskirts of the city. The main flashpoint was in Glengormley, where men dressed all in black and wearing face coverings targeted the police with projectiles. The family of victim Stephen Ogilvie say that they are disgusted by the disorder. That's after the suspected attacker, Hadi Al-Adid, appeared in court charged with attempted murder. Well, our national reporter Charlie Peters has been in Belfast for us for the last few days, where police have made arrests and now extra officers have been sent in after that night of violence.
Protesters were pushed back by a water cannon after they approached police lines in riot gear, threw mortar and bricks and other objects, including bins set on fire, towards police officers. One derelict property on this road has been set on fire and gutted by flames. There's also a burned out car in the road. We're hearing this morning that 12 police officers have been injured and there have been 16 arrests after last night's disorder.
Well, earlier today, Northern Ireland Secretary Hilary Benn joined us on the programme, and he said that there was less disorder than the night before, but still condemned what he called